Chapter 195. This chapter is *GGQ**. Thank you for the updates. Hit with a stick, then give a carrot. Liszt did not exert much effort to do this. The world had vast resources, but the resources that could be controlled were limited and needed to be competed for. On the Coral Island, if Liszt did not compete for resources in channels, he would not be able to develop. Benevolence was for the common people to hear. Plundering resources was the essence of aristocracy. Obviously, the current Liszt was very comfortable with aristocratic identity and rules of conduct. After reminding Sherlock, he put the matter aside and no longer paid attention to it. He had mithril, crystals, jade, and black pearls. Any one of them could be exchanged for a lot of gold coins. With gold coins in hand, the world was mine. There was no need to focus on one or two small businesses. Carter took the empty cup of milk tea and closed the door. The study was completely quiet. The light of the 3 crystal lamps converged, and the room was as bright as day. He opened the night novel and continued his writing until Carter knocked on the door again, reminding him that it was late at night. "I'm going to rest, Mr. Carter. You should also rest early. Good night." "Good night, master." Liszt shook the thick bast paper on the table. There was a thick stack of serpentines written on the paper. Closing the night novel and putting it back on the bookshelf, he sorted out the paper he had written on. Looking at the densely packed characters written with a goose feather pen, he felt a sense of accomplishment. As a visitor from a civilized world, he was in a cultural and historical desert, and he always felt that something was missing. Therefore, he was going to write a truly great book himself. He had the idea of writing a great book on sociology before, but he had not put it into action. Now he really started writing. Of course, he was not going to write a sociological book like Das Kapital. He intended to compile a chronicle of history based on the history and customs of various countries involved in the night novel. Confucius revised the major events recorded by the historian of the state of Lu into the Confucian classic Spring and Autumn Annals, which influenced China's values for thousands of years. He himself had become a saint of a generation. Whether he was defeated or revived, he had become one of the symbols of China's culture. After riding a dragon, Liszt felt that he had to have a bigger dream. The Dragon Knight would only live for 100 years. After his death, he would rely on the dragon blessing for a few more generations. After that, his body and reputation would be destroyed. Once it was written into the Spring and Autumn Annals, it would be able to influence the world for thousands of years to come. Of course, the Spring and Autumn Annals was based on historical records, so Liszt could not copy it. There was no concept of history here, not even a single history book. Based on the content of the night's novel, he compiled history book. It was more like he was writing Homer's epic. The Homeric epics, for the most part, are adapted by Homer from myths, folklore, and street songs, but this does not prevent them from being touted as the greatest work of Greek civilization. It was as if he was flattering the official history. Perhaps after a few years, Liszt and his dragon would disappear into thin air. The world had developed greatly and experienced all kinds of changes. There would also be people who would treat the history book he was writing now as real history. Inventing history? That was what Liszt did, and he did it with great feeling, as if he was pointing a deer at a horse. It's a pity that there is too little information. Even if I copy the night's novel and make up stories, I can't fill in much of the historical gap. I'm afraid this book will be my lifetime series. He even suspected that the book he wrote could only maintain its popularity for 3 minutes. After all, making up stories, no, recording history was very brain-consuming. Now this book doesn't have a name yet. I have to think of a name that can be passed down through the ages. In fact, it would be best to call it the Dragonlance Chronicles. The dragon and the knight's lance are very much in line with the characteristics of this world. Liszt pondered. It was a pity that a magic shooter named Odom Truth had written a storybook called The Dragonlance Chronicles, The Dragon of Autumn. That book recorded the species of dragons and had nothing to do with history. So in his mind, names such as Dragon History, Elf Dragon History, Dragon and Elf Chronicles, Dragon Rider Chronicles, Knight Chronicles and so on emerged. But they were all rejected. Until another name came to mind. The Dragon Fights in the Wild. He chewed on these 4 words and felt very emotional. Confucius revised the historical materials of the state of Lu, and because the historical materials were divided into 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn and winter, it was named the Spring and Autumn Annals. In this world, dragon slayers often occur, and the battles between countries are dominated by dragons. Dragon Battles in the Wild, such a title, had a very charming style. Swish, swish, swish. Lifting the quill pen, he wrote the title of the book directly on the thick bast paper. After writing, he put all the thick bast paper into the gem space to prevent it from decaying over the years. The white paper was not ready to be developed yet, and the thick bast paper would not be kept for long. After all, this history book was a lifetime series. He resisted the ambition to continue inventing history. He got up and stretched and left the study. Just a few days after Liszt was obsessed with making history. Under the leadership of Bernal, the soap workshop was producing flower soap at full capacity every day. Soap and soap had been forgotten in the corner. Expensive soap powder and cheap pig pancreas were constantly refined, mixed, and pressed into pieces of pink and fragrant flower soap. The finished flower soap was quickly sent to the Thorns caravan. Sherlock was a very thoughtful businessman. Old Grandette had become an official and Harpagon had taken over the huge flower caravan. Only he was still in the Thorns caravan. He was not willing to fall behind, so he spent a lot of effort on selling flower soap, trying to become famous. Let the Lord see his ability. To this end, he specially invited a carver from the North Valley City, an advanced profession of carpenter, responsible for carving exquisite patterns on wood. He asked the carver to carve a tulip on the front of the soap, and then engraved flower soap in serpentines. On the back, there was a line of small serpentines, Flower Town Specialty Soap, the work of soap master Bernal. Then, he also specially asked the town's carpenter shop to make a soap box containing the flower soap, with a black tulip painted on it, and the name of the soap. With such a decoration, the grade of the flower soap immediately rose several levels. In this way, the flower soap is not only a piece of soap, but also a product that represents status. I believe the nobles will like it. Sherlock presented the beautifully packaged flower soap to Liszt for inspection. Unsurprisingly, it received very high praise from Liszt. The Lord also called him a natural businessman. Excitement surrounded Sherlock. He could not wait to take this batch of exquisite flower soap and visit the nobles of North Valley City under the banner of Liszt. Chapter 196. This chapter is titled Crippling Feather of Death. Soap is a standard for aristocrats, but there are differences in the degree of importance. Fastidious aristocrats like Liszt can't do without soap. Unfastidious aristocrats don't care about soap at all. Gelta is obviously an unfastidious aristocrat, judging from the fact that his hair is almost greasy. After accepting the flower soap, he just opened the box and looked at it. He asked his housekeeper to take the soap to the bathroom, and then went hunting on horseback. Time flew by and it was night. Gelta did not go back to the castle for dinner, he went drinking with the knight. His wife did not come back for dinner either, the couple were used to being outside. It was not until the moon rose that his wife withdrew from the aristocratic society and yawned back to the castle. "Is the master back yet?" "The master hasn't come back yet, madam. All he knows is to drink outside all day." "Forget it, Leah, help me with the bath." The madam complained and ordered the maid to help her prepare the bath water. A moment later, she went into the bathroom. But soon she shouted again, "Lia, Lia, damn it, where's my soap?" Lia ran in a panic. "Madam, the soap is in the wooden box on your left," she said, holding up the wooden box with the black tulip, opened the lid, and revealed the pink flower soap inside. "When did you change the soap?" The madam frowned, her tone revealing anger. She was used to using the kind of soap with a rough surface and pinched soap powder. It was the first time she saw this kind of soap, and she felt uncomfortable. Most importantly, without her permission, she had replaced the items she liked to use. Lia quickly explained, "It's the master. The master received a new type of soap from Flower Town today, so he replaced it with this kind of flower soap." "Sent from Flower Town?" The madam was stunned, picked up the flower soap, and a handsome face that made women jealous appeared in her mind. The town of Barrenlist, that young man, always likes to tinker with something new. "Okay, you go down." Lia, who left the bathroom, breathed a long sigh of relief. In the bathtub, the steam of hot water lingered. Holding the flower soap, the lady did not know what to think, and her eyes gradually blurred. She dipped the flower soap in water and began to apply it to her body. She only felt that the soap, which should have a rough friction feeling, was extremely smooth, and there were a lot of bubbles directly. When women take a bath, they like the foam. She unconsciously reached out and touched her skin with the flower soap. She was over 40 years old, and her skin was gradually loose and her pores began to expand. But at this moment, under the lubrication of the flower soap, it was as delicate as a baby. It attracted her to keep stroking and rubbing on his skin. This feeling was exceptionally wonderful, and the bubbles that rose up added a lot of charm to the atmosphere. She didn't know how many times she had rubbed it, but she began to rinse the bubbles away with water. His skin was clean and clean. Candles were lit in the bathroom. The light wasn't too bright, but she could still see that her skin was fairer than usual. In particular, the feeling of cleanliness was something that couldn't be seen in the past. It was like using soap in the past only to clean the surface. Now with the flower soap, the deepest part of the skin is cleaned. "I've never felt so comfortable before." She held a small piece of flower soap, and the more she looked at it, the more she liked it. "It's much better than soap, I like this feeling." She used to take a bath in half an hour. This time, she asked the maid to add hot water twice, and washed for a whole hour. When she washed her body and wrung out her hair, even the maid who put on her pajamas felt different. "Madam, you look a lot younger tonight, it's so beautiful." It was hard to say whether the madam was beautiful or not, but when Lia touched the madam's skin, she felt tight. It used to be loose, but today it became tight. The contrast was quite strong. The madam was in a good mood. "It's amazing, isn't it, Lia? It's hard to believe that a piece of flower soap made me feel young again." "Is this flower soap really so magical?" "Of course it's magical, just like List in Flower Town, full of magic. Seafood, intermediate World of Warcraft, thorn sprites, scrambled eggs and egg soup, and all kinds of bread. As many nobles say, Flower Town is a place blessed by the glory of the night." Lia had followed Madame to the Flower Town and had tasted the new food. The Flower Town is indeed a different place. After combing her hair, the Madame touched her face, admired it in the crystal mirror for a moment, and then got up and left the bathroom. She called the housekeeper and said, "Remember to let the master bathe with flower soap when he comes back." "Yes, madam." Gelta came back late, still drunk, and took a bath with the help of the manservant. The servant used the flower soap for him, according to the madam's instructions. However, he did not have the patience to wash himself well with the flower soap. He just hurriedly wiped himself a few times and flushed. Entering the bedroom, he saw the madam holding a thick bast paper bill, checking the income of the town's manor. He felt as if he was in a trance. His old and ugly wife seemed to give him an illusion of radiance tonight. He shook his head to get rid of the illusion. "I'll see it during the day, go to bed early." He lay in bed, reminded her, and then glanced at his wife's arm, which looked much more white and tender. He couldn't help but reach out and touch it. In an instant, the original impression of relaxation was replaced by a tight touch in his hand, and he couldn't help but make a strange "oh" sound. His body seemed to be touched. Perhaps the alcohol had played a role, but he had a long-lost libido. The hand also climbed up the already crooked mountain peak. "I'll go to sleep after I see it. What's wrong?" The madam was a little surprised by the sudden attack on her chest. Today was not the day when taxes had to be paid every month. Nothing. Gelta said nothing, but his body did not stop and directly pressed down on his wife. Despite feeling strange, the madam did not push her husband away, but threw away the thick bast paper and began to respond to Gelta's initiative. This kind of initiative seen, with the passage of time, is almost rare. A few minutes later, everything was calm. Gelta rolled over and lay on the bed. He was so tired that he gasped for air and fell into a deep sleep. Beside him, the madam breathed a long sigh of relief and covered her husband with a quilt. Then, taking advantage of the aftermath that had not calmed down, she fiddled with it for a while to solve her worries and troubles. After calming down, she touched her tightened skin, and a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. The bathroom has to be stocked with flower soap. She turned and blew out the candle. Chapter 197. This chapter is Xianzong. My lord, the response to the flower soap is very strong. Many nobles have offered to buy it. Sherlock often travels between North Valley City and Flower Town. As a businessman under list, with the birth of the Thorn Sprite, his status has risen and he is now a heavyweight in the business world of North Valley City. When he got the feedback, he reported it to List. Merchants were good at reading people's expressions. Sherlock knew that this young dungeon lord might not be interested in power and worldly affairs, but he likes to have all the information and doesn't like anyone blinding his eyes. Therefore, he always looks for opportunities to report to List. It seems that the flower soap has brewed a wave of good momentum, so let's do it. I look forward to seeing the flower soap dominate the soap market on Coral Island. As you wish, my lord. Sherlock replied loudly. Sherlock is willing to devote all his strength to the lord's wishes. List looked at Sherlock, who was suspected of flattering him, and was in a good mood. Don't let me down, Mr. Sherlock. Hearing such a title, Sherlock was even more excited. My lord, please rest assured. After leaving the castle, he was full of ambition. He knew that with the flower soap, he would gain a position in the lord's heart that was no less than Harpagon's, and might even be on par with old Grandette. I need people to spread the news for me. Spread the reputation of the flower soap to the 6 cities on Coral Island and every small town below. First of all, let the caravans that sell the soap understand that the flower soap can be cheaper but of better quality. Every time they sell a flower soap, they can make more profit. Obviously, the flower soap could not be given away in large quantities for free. Sherlock was eager to spread his reputation and unify the market, so he decided to lower the price. Any advertising effect was not as good as letting the seller make more money. What? Flower soap, which is better than scented soap, is only 1 silver coin and 50 copper coins? A traveling merchant shouted in surprise. That's right. If you want to purchase the soap from Baron Henderson, you'll need 1 silver coin and 80 copper coins. You'll only be able to earn 20 copper coins by reselling it. But if you sell the flower soap, you will earn 50 copper coins, which is equivalent to selling 2.5 pieces of soap. You can calculate this account yourself. But is flower soap really that good? The nobles of North Valley City have already used it, and everyone is praising it. You can feel free to ask around. In addition, I have a piece of used flower soap here. I can let you try it once. Of course, the traveling merchant would not believe Sherlock's words, so he fetched some water and tried the flower soap. Super foam, smooth texture, clean effect, and the experience of tightening the skin after use. all let the pedicure merchant understand that flower soap is indeed better than ordinary soap. Replacing scented soap with flower soap will undoubtedly succeed. Sherlock added, if you plan to order, you have to make a decision quickly. The soap workshop in Flower Town has limited output. When the aristocrats are competing for the flower soap, maybe we will raise its price. The price increase defeated the last hesitation of the pedicure merchant. He gritted his teeth and nodded. So, Captain Sherlock, I want to order 5. No, I want to order 10 pieces of flower soap. With a snap of his fingers, Sherlock wrote down the pedicure merchant's order on thick bast paper. A wise decision. Then he collected the deposit from the pedicure merchant and agreed to deliver the soap in 3 days. He got up and left. Holding the thick bast paper tightly in his hand, there were 7 orders written on it, belonging to the 7 pedicure merchants of North Valley City. They mainly operated the trade routes in the small towns around North Valley City. And these 7 pedicure merchants ordered a total of 58 pieces of flower soap. There were also many aristocrats who ordered flower soap directly, bypassing the pedicure merchants. For example, the butler of Baron Gelta ordered 8 pieces of flower soap from him. Captain Sherlock, we have a perfect start. Flower soap will become a luxury pursued by the aristocracy. They will not be able to live without flower soap in the future, the deputy said cheerfully. Sherlock smiled reservedly. According to the usage of soap, North Valley City can sell 300 pieces of soap a month. Snake Spear City, Gravel City, Elm City, and White Birch City are about the same, adding up to 1,500 pieces of soap. Coral City has the most aristocrats, lord, knight, and knight, as well as those rich freedmen, who use at least 2,000 pieces of soap a month. In other words, flower soap will unify the soap market. On Coral Island, 3,500 pieces of soap can be sold a month, plus at least 300 pieces can be sold on Beer Island, as well as Flower Town's own use. The monthly shipment is close to 4,000 pieces. 4,000 pieces of flower soap. Sherlock thought of such a picture and couldn't help but grin. 1 piece of flower soap, 1 silver coin plus 50 copper coins, that's a full. He couldn't figure it out. He simply counted his fingers and finally came up with a monthly sales of 6,000 silver coins. The cost of flower soap is only 40 copper coins, which means that he can earn 4,400 silver coins a month. With the unification of the flower soap market, the price can be raised to 1 silver coin plus 80 copper coins, which is the original wholesale price of the soap. As for the cost, as long as Baron Henderson is squeezed out, the price of soap powder can be further reduced. He roughly estimated that it can be compressed to 30 copper coins. The net profit of 1 flower soap is 1 silver coin plus 50 copper coins, and the total monthly profit reaches 60 gold coins. He can earn 2 gold coins a day. Compared to the seafood business at its peak, with a net profit of nearly 4 gold coins a day, the flower soap is slightly worse, but the labor and material costs of this business are lower. Moreover, the flower soap business is led by me. Whether it is the Thorns Caravan or the Flower Caravan, they must cooperate with me. With this confidence, Sherlock met Harpagon, who had rushed over from Coral City, and discussed with him how to unify the Coral Islands market. But Sherlock never thought that Harpagon would also come prepared. The little Kerchief Island fellow squinted at him. Sherlock, your vision is too narrow. Unifying the Coral Island market is not a skill. With the advantages of the flower soap, it doesn't take much action to slowly eliminate ordinary soap. I think we should look to the outer islands and civilians. Outer islands? Civilians? Sherlock was stunned. The flower soap can be made into a specialty of Coral Island and sold to the outer islands with the help of Tulip Castle and Beer Castle. At the same time, I asked Burnell about the flower soap. But by reducing the amount of materials, we can make less effective ordinary soap, and supply it to civilians at a low cost. Harpagon smiled proudly and gave Sherlock a provocative look. I have reported to the Lord, and the Lord supports my ideas and plans. A strike. Chapter 198. Harpagon is much bolder than Sherlock. He is more far-sighted and has a fighting spirit. After Captain Costo becomes proficient in sailing, I intend to let Harpagon preside over the sea trade. Castle study at night. Liszt and Butler Carter each had a glass of red wine, slowly tasting it, and chatting about the past, present, and future. Carter's hair was a lot grayer, but his spirit was much better than when he first arrived in Flower Town. Master, isn't it too big of a step to carry out cross-sea trade now? Now I'm just using the foreign trade channels of Tulip Castle and Beer Castle to build channels belonging to Flower Town. I'm not in a hurry to take over these channels. Liszt smiled slightly. Flower Town is only temporary. In the near future, I will have my own city or island. He took a sip of red wine and went on to say, I can't always be sheltered under the wings of the family. Father may not mind, but Levis and Lytton will always have something to say. It turns out that your eyes have seen more. Master, please forgive my short-sightedness. Seeing far is one thing, and doing well in the present is another. I need you to remind me often, Mr. Carter. The master and servant flattered each other, and the atmosphere was harmonious. A moment later, the topic turned to flower soap. Carter was filled with emotion. I was very surprised to hear your conversation with Mr. Harpagon. I didn't expect flower soap to be so popular and occupy such a huge market. Popularity is to be expected, Liszt said calmly. In fact, the technical content of flower soap is not great, and the decontamination effect is not heaven-defying. However, the addition of certain substances in pig pancreas and plant ash does give flower soap a lot of texture, lubrication, foam, and a skin-tightening effect. It is enough to completely defeat soap with average decontamination effect. Accustomed to ordinary soap bathing, there will be a huge contrast when it comes to flower soap. When washed clean, the whole person will naturally glow with a new brilliance. For the nobles, this is enough to make them abandon soap and switch to flower soap. As for the use of flower soap, it can also arouse the husband's sexual interest, which only Madame Gerta knows. It is estimated that no one else understands. Naturally, under the deliberate publicity of the flower caravan, the reputation of the flower soap began to spread from North Valley City to the entire Coral Island. Coral City, in particular, has always been a fashion vein. The cost of the flower soap was not low, and it was impossible to give every aristocrat a trial. Instead of using Sherlock's method of casting a wide net, Harpagon placed it precisely. Miss Shirley, this is my lord, Sir Baron Liszt. He asked me to give you a gift, 2 pieces of Flower Town's own flower soap. It's better than scented soap and more in line with your stunning beauty and noble temperament. Ah, did Big Brother Liszt give it to me? Thank you. Shirley happily received the gift and saw that there was a thick bast paper attached to it. On the thick bast paper were serpentines written by Liszt himself. Dear little Shirley, I have a lot of things to do in Flower Town and can't come to Coral City to see you. I can only give you 2 pieces of flower soap. May beauty always be with you, yours, Brother Liszt. Dear Madam, Harpagon greets you. Harpagon, captain of the flower caravan, did Liszt send you? Madame Penelope received Harpagon. Lord Baron Liszt misses you very much. He sent me to bring you 2 pieces of Flower Town's flower soap. I hope you like it. Harpagon said respectfully. Lord Baron said that if you like it, you can always send someone to tell the caravan that the flower soap will be supplied to you free of charge. Specialty flower soap? It's a kind of soap? Madame Penelope was not a little girl like Shirley. Her eyes moved and she understood everything. This boy is getting more and more shrewd. No wonder he looks like Melissa. This shrewdness is worthy of being the grandson of Marquis Merlin. Harpagon smiled awkwardly and did not answer. He did not dare to evaluate a noble or his lord. Madame Penelope said, "Well, I accept the gift. If they are really good, I will put in a good word for him. At least my old face knows a lot of people." Once again, Harpagon will take his leave. The flower soap was undoubtedly completing its impact on the soap market. This was a big deal for Sherlock and Harpagon, but for Liszt, it was just a way to make money and give advice to his subordinate. Now, he had a new task. Just this afternoon, the smoke changed. Task completed, reward 5 rotten bones. It was not hard to guess that Marcus and others on Black Horse Island had already built a temporary stronghold on the island and settled 100 serfs. A new task was also born. Task: raising horses requires a large number and variety of pasture. Black Horse Island is not suitable for growing more pasture at present. Why not cultivate corn grass in Flower Town to increase nutrition for the black-blooded horse herd? Please cultivate 100 acres of corn grass. Reward: a sprite worm. The task of rewarding sprite worms must be completed. Every sprite worm is a treasure. But when Liszt saw the content of the task, he frowned deeply. He called the barley settlement's steward. "Gajeel, how many acres of corn grass are currently planted in the barley settlement?" "Sir Lord, there are a total of 30 acres of corn grass." "Is the corn grass now cultivated? Can it germinate and safely survive the winter?" Gajeel hesitated. "Sir Lord, Gajeel has not taken care of the corn grass in the winter and does not know if it can survive the winter." "So how many corn grass seeds have you harvested?" "The seeds have been handed in to the administrative office, about a few 100 pounds. Much of the corn grass is directly cut down for grazing, and only a small part is used for seed." Liszt looked at the weather outside. It was almost late autumn and the weather was no longer warm. Such a climate was not suitable for farming crops, but the smoke task was placed here. Otherwise, it would be difficult to ensure the birth of a sprite worm. He was sure that this was a corn grass sprite worm, but it was hard to say whether it could be bred or not. It depended on the progress of the task. No matter how difficult it was, he had to do it. He immediately ordered. Immediately reclaim 70 acres of land and expand the corn grass field to 100 acres. Gajeel, hurry up. Yes, Sir Lord. Gajeel will arrange for everyone to reclaim the new land. The task began. On the other side, Liszt also took the time to explore the barley settlement's corn grass field. He constantly released magic eyes in an attempt to find signs of a sprite worm being bred. As long as he found signs of a sprite worm, even if the task failed, he was confident that he could breed a sprite worm. Unfortunately, he did not see any signs of magic power. The corn grass field was filled with ordinary corn grass, and there was nothing special about it. He sighed and comforted himself. "I hope the corn grass can germinate in this weather. Let me complete the task first." The next day, the flower returned. Marcus brought him a piece of news regarding the task reward. Chapter 199. What kind of bone do you think it is? Liszt asked curiously. The height of an ordinary person is about 1.7 meters, that is to say, the diameter of each of the 5 bones is greater than 1.7 meters. One can imagine how long they would be and how big the skeleton would be. Marcus unconsciously turned his head and looked at the door, as if to make sure that no one was eavesdropping behind the door, and then replied in a measured tone, "I think it might be dragon bones." Dragon bones. Liszt was shocked, then suppressed his surprise and excitement, and asked his doubts. "If it is dragon bones, is there any mineral deposits in that valley?" It seems that no mineral deposits were found. We dug the bones a few meters deep until we were blocked by rock. We did not find metal-like ore, nor did we find crystals or gems. Really? Dragons can infect their surroundings. If it is the bones of a metal dragon or gem dragon, I am afraid that the whole island will become a mine. Since it has not become a mine, it means that the bones should not be the remains of a metal dragon or gem dragon. Marcus guessed, maybe it is the bones of an elemental dragon? An elemental dragon is also unlikely. I talked to Elkson and he read a book written by an archmage. It recorded that the magic of an elemental dragon is long-lasting and will also infect its surroundings. The roaring wind valley of the Empire of Light was formed after the Battle of the Wind Dragon, and the wind is still roaring today. After several discussions, the species of the bones during their lifetime has ruled out the possibility of dragons. Could it be Super Dragon World of Warcraft? Marcus raised another possibility. I have only heard of Advanced Dragon World of Warcraft, but no matter how big Advanced World of Warcraft is, it is impossible for a bone to be 7 meters in diameter. So I guess it is Super Dragon World of Warcraft, but it seems to be a legendary species. World of Warcraft is divided into low, intermediate, advanced, and super. In fact, the division between Advanced World of Warcraft and Super Warcraft is very vague. Because there are not many individuals observed, and there is no standard, whether to distinguish between advanced and super by combat power or by body shape. Basically, humans are not willing to provoke the powerful World of Warcraft. And according to rumors, there was not a single World of Warcraft in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The continent was boundless, and World of Warcraft would only appear in Night Tales. The Earl had invaded the Eagle Kingdom every year and had seen many things, but he had never heard of Super Warcraft in the Eagle Kingdom. Not to mention the Super Dragon-type magical beasts. At the level of World of Warcraft, the bloodline was infinitely powerful. Being infected by a dragon was only a theoretical possibility. After discussing for a long time, the two of them still couldn't come up with any clues. They couldn't guess what kind of creature had left those 5 huge bones behind. Tomorrow, I will personally go to Black Horse Island to see what is so wonderful about these 5 bones. He left as soon as he said he would. He instructed the town's officials to urge the Barley Settlement's serfs to cultivate corn grass. List took a boat directly, took Dosen, and went to Black Horse Island with Marcus. After sailing for half a day, they reached their destination without a hitch. A simple dock had been built, made of wood suspended on the sea, and it was a little shaky when walking on it. As for Dosen, he had to take a wooden boat. His overweight physique was not something the floating dock could bear. After landing, he saw a row of brand-new wooden houses standing no more than 100 meters from the dock. There were serfs clearing gravel and weeds around. It was a very simple stronghold, but this meant that List had gained a firm foothold on Black Horse Island. Without delay, while there was still time, he went straight to the valley where the 5 big bones were found. On the way, he happened to meet the Black Blood Horse herd. The Horse King was a little unfamiliar with List, but when List rode it, he quickly became familiar with it. Carrying List, he sprinted and turned back along the way. On the way, Marcus reported to him on his inspection of Black Horse Island these days. There is no World of Warcraft on the island, at least no World of Warcraft has been found so far. There are only some small carnivores and herbivores, and the largest animal is the black blood horse. The vegetation is also very monotonous, there are few trees, and most of them are miscellaneous trees. No one knows this kind of miscellaneous tree, and there are not many branches. He pointed to a tree on the side of the road. This tree was the miscellaneous tree he mentioned. The trunk was very straight, the branches were high, and it was not lush. It had no flowers or fruits, and it did not grow tall. The leaves were slightly yellow, and it seemed to be a deciduous tree. It was ordinary. Marcus continued, there are many weeds on the island. In addition to the pasture grass on the pasture, the rest are common weeds. The black blood horse does not eat these weeds, so getting rid of them is the best choice. Finally, he added, Sir, I am drawing a map of Black Horse Island, but it is not finished yet. List suddenly asked, Have you chosen the place to build the castle? Not yet, there are not many defensive terrains on the island. The hills are not high and the terrain is not steep. It is impossible to build a steep castle like Tulip Castle, which may not even be comparable to the terrain of Beer Castle. I think that if you really want to build a castle, you can only build it on flat ground, thicken the walls, and dig a moat. Not every castle can be backed against a cliff, and most castles are built on flat ground. Liszt was simply concerned. Soon, the group came to the valley where the 5 bones were found under the setting sun. This valley was located between the ice grass mound and the needle grass mound. Because the weeds were deep and the bones were buried deep, it was difficult to find. I was inspecting the terrain while riding the Black Devil, which was how I found these remains and these 5 bones. Marcus patted the Black Devil under him and went to the center of the valley where weeds had been shoveled away. Behind him was a large pit that had just been dug. In the center of the pit, a huge gray-white broken bone was inserted obliquely into the ground. Around it were 4 huge bones with a small section exposed, and bone fragments scattered on the ground. It looked like some kind of creature had died here. With the weathering of time, most of the bones had gradually decayed, leaving only these 5 bones still standing, but they should also have decayed. The reward of the smoke mission clearly indicated that these were 5 decayed bones. Liszt dismounted. Approaching the pit, stepping on the rocks at the bottom of the pit, Liszt approached the bones step by step. The closer he got to the bones, the more he felt small, as if he was standing in front of a huge stone pillar. He reached out and touched the surface of the bones, which was as hard as rock. When he knocked on it, he could hear a stone-like sound. Liszt cast magic eyes to observe the 5 bones and the bone fragments on the ground. No traces of magic were found. This bone should have become a fossil, right? But he quickly shook his head. Fossils were integrated with the stone, and this bone, obviously, still had a part exposed. Teacher Marcus, have you examined the bone fragments on the ground? Hard, suitable for making fine bone tools. Marcus responded briefly. Fine bone tools, enough to show the quality of the bones, at least at the low-level World of Warcraft level. Bang bang bang! Liszt knocked the bones again. For a time, apart from being shocked, he was left scratching his head. He didn't know what the smoke mission reward of these 5 bones was for. Chapter 200. This chapter is a reward for the leader. Big ears attract wind. At present, there are still a total of 20 chapters owed to the leader. As for other chapters, they will be slowly filled up in Old White's heart. The 5 huge skeletons left behind by the unknown creatures definitely had unusual uses, but Liszt hadn't discovered them yet. He wanted to put the bones into the space gem, but unfortunately, the bones were too big to fit. Besides, they were inserted into the rock and could not be pulled out. Teacher Marcus, remember to arrange for people to dig them out if they can. If they can't, then protect them in place. Understood. In addition, send someone to pick up the bone fragments on the ground and transport them back to Flower Town with the flour. It just so happens that I plan to open a bone smith shop in Flower Town. Marcus nodded and said, These bone fragments are indeed suitable for making excellent bone tools. With the number of fragments here, the serfs of Flower Town will no longer lack farming tools, and the patrols and insect protection teams can also get 2 more bone weapons. Speaking of bone tools, Liszt suddenly remembered that there was a keel bone in his gem space. According to Costo, the keel bone should be made from the bones of a high-level dragon species in World of Warcraft. Teacher Marcus, do you remember the keel bone? He patted the huge bone and said, The keel bone is said to be the bones of a high-level dragon species in World of Warcraft, but compared to the bones in front of us, there is a world of difference. I think the gap between the super dragon species in World of Warcraft and the high-level dragon species in World of Warcraft should not be so huge. This denied the previous speculation. Marcus obviously also thought of it and frowned. Dragons are denied, and the super dragon species in World of Warcraft is also denied, so what kind of creature left these 5 bones? In a short period of time, there was no answer to this question. As the sun was about to set, the group had to leave the valley and return to the temporary stronghold. There was no need to sleep on the ship at night, and Dosen was dragged far away by List. There was no snoring, and he could rest quietly for the night. But he was lying on a hardwood bed. List did not sleep immediately, he was still thinking about the bones. 5 decayed bones, which means that it's been around for a long time, and that it's a super powerful creature. Apart from dragons, the only other creature that fit this description was the legendary super dragon race in World of Warcraft. According to the classification of meddlesome magical creatures, the super dragon species in World of Warcraft is second only to dragons. In many Night novels, the super dragon race in World of Warcraft frequently appeared. But they have another name, Yalong. All the other low-level dragons in World of Warcraft had the same name, Draconic Beast. There were even some Night novels that believed that dragons were also a type of World of Warcraft and forcefully classified them as wyverns. They even forcefully grouped wyverns, lesser dragons, and draconic beasts together and classified them as one species. This undoubtedly belittled the noble bloodline of dragons, so this type of Night novel was not popular and belonged to a niche category. List didn't agree either. He wanted to ride a dragon even in his dreams. Telling him that dragons were just a form of World of Warcraft was an insult to his lofty ideals. This kind of Night novel should be listed as a banned book. So, it's not a dragon, nor is it a lesser dragon. What are the 5 bones? The thoughts in his mind were mixed, and all kinds of ideas kept emerging. Then he paused for a moment to analyze whether it was right or wrong. The lesser dragon is World of Warcraft. It's hard to say whether it exists or not. It should be ruled out first. I have ruled out the gem dragon, the metal dragon, and the elemental dragon, but there is still the holy dragon. Could it be the smoke dragon? He suddenly thought of his golden finger, the smoke quest that was linked to fate. He always thought that the smoke quest was the product of the smoke dragon. But he was more inclined to contact the smoke dragon when he was a child, and then was infected by the smoke dragon. But now a new idea arose. If the smoke dragon died, its magic infected me and formed a smoke quest? And it died on Black Horse Island and infected a group of black-blooded horses? The idea could not be said to be illogical and reasonable. But when he thought about it carefully, there were some things that did not conform to common sense. After all, the bones had decayed and maybe thousands of years had passed. There was no reason for it to suddenly infect a little kid on the neighboring coral island. In the memory of his predecessor, he had not been to other islands except Red Crab Island and Beer Island. Not to mention Black Horse Island, which had just been discovered. Moreover, the description of the smoke dragon generally said that it was a cloud of smoke, and there was no such thing as bones or flesh. After death, it would probably disappear directly. There was no reason to leave such a skeleton behind. It shouldn't be the smoke dragon, and the invisible dragon doesn't match either. The invisible dragon is very small. Fairy dragon? No, the fairy dragon has an infinite lifespan and can't die. Dusk dragon? Emerald dragon? He still couldn't figure it out. After one night, at dawn the next day, he rode lightning again and came to the valley to observe the bones. The serfs who lived on Black Horse Island soon arrived in teams and began to pick up every piece of bone on the ground, packed it, and transported it to the temporary stronghold. Marcus took another team and began to dig up the other 4 bones to see if they could dig them out and see the whole picture of the bones. These bones, although not fossilized, did lose part of the nature of bones. Dosen, a fellow who loved to eat bones, had no interest in the bone fragments on the ground. He followed behind List, eyeing the horse King Lightning covetously, saliva dripping to the ground. The horse King Lightning was dismissive of Dosen and leisurely gnawed on the grass roots on the ground. Not far away, the black-blooded horses were grazing on the hillside. From time to time, the black-blooded horses raised their heads and looked in the direction of Lightning. They still followed Lightning's lead. "Sir, halfway through the second bone, we encountered a rock layer and couldn't dig any further." Marcus came over and reported. "It seems that there are rocks under the soil of this Black Horse Island." List walked to the new pit, jumped to the bottom of the pit, and stepped on the solid rock. He squatted down and reached out to brush the dirt off the rock, trying to get a closer look at what kind of rock it was. However, he didn't know much about rocks. He just felt that this kind of stone was harder and seemed to have dense holes on it, like bubbles. Bubbles! Suddenly he felt that he remembered something, but he couldn't grasp this inspiration. So he told the serfs who were preparing to dig the third bone, "Expand this pit, I want to see more rocks." He didn't believe that the rock layer would be a whole piece of rock. There must be a fracture, and he could pry open a piece and study it carefully. Sure enough, after the serfs expanded the bare surface of the rock at the bottom of the pit, List saw the gaps between the rock. However, as the bottom of the pit was constantly expanded and the soil was removed, more and more rock surfaces were exposed. He was surprised to find that these rocks were very orderly, like a wash-basin-sized hexagon. And there was a high and low distribution between the rocks, like a staircase in a row. Chapter 201. Before List crossed over, he was fascinated by an American TV series called Game of Thrones. There was a very magnificent building in it, the Great Wall. With the help of giants, humans built a 300-mile-long, 700-foot-high ice wall. At first, he was very interested in the Great Wall, so he looked up a lot of information and knew that the original shape of the Great Wall was a cliff formed by a basalt pillar in the west of Iceland. Because of this, he learned about the great wonders of nature like the basalt pillar. The Giant's Causeway in Ireland, the Devil's Tower in the United States, the Fingal Cave in Scotland, and the Gezi Mountain Pillar Forest in Nanjing are all typical basalt pillars. It is hard to believe that the neatly arranged stone pillars originated from volcanic eruptions. When the volcano erupts magma, it cools to form basalt with pores and gradually shrinks, and the cracks form a very regular geometric shape. In most cases, it forms a hexagonal shape, as if it has been co-processed. This is a basalt pillar, no doubt about it. With the continuous excavation of the pit, the appearance of the basalt pillar was revealed little by little. The orderly hexagonal stone pillars revealed their true faces one by one. Costo, who was following behind List, suddenly shouted, "I remember now! My lord, I remember now! I've seen this kind of rock on an island." "What island?" "An uninhabited island that I encountered on the voyage to Deep Throat Island. The whole island is densely packed with stone pillars, the shape of which is the same as the stone pillars here." Costo's words supported List's judgment. The rock under his feet was a basalt pillar, a geological structure formed by volcanic eruptions. Looking at the huge skeleton again, he suddenly thought of a possibility. He thought silently, "Maybe my previous judgment was wrong. This is not the wreckage of a dragon. Maybe this is the wreckage of a fire dragon. Wind dragons can form wind-roaring valleys with strong winds all year round. Fire dragons can naturally form volcanoes. If it was a fire dragon that fell here at the last moment of its life, with its magic, it would definitely form a volcanic eruption, and the body of the fire dragon would be engulfed by the volcano. As time passed, perhaps after tens of thousands of years, the magic of the fire dragon gradually dissipated, the volcano died, and the upper layer was gradually weathered or blown by the wind, forming the present Black Horse Island. Black Horse Island does not look like a volcanic island. However, List felt that it was very reasonable. This place might have originally been deep in the sea, but because of the fire dragon's fall, the volcano continued to erupt layer by layer, and finally broke through the seawater, revealing the surface of the sea. If I dive down now and spy on the shore-based situation under the seawater of Black Horse Island, it might look like a huge volcano. The exposed Black Horse Island is just part of the crater. You don't say, it really does look a little similar. Ice grass mound, needle grass mound, alfalfa mound, and sheep grass mound are arranged in the shape of a mouth, forming a low-lying valley that fits the structure of a volcanic crater. The location of the bones is between the needle grass mound and the ice grass mound, not far from the crater of the volcano. Perhaps the fire dragon's bones were brought out by the volcanic eruption. Thinking like this, even if the magic I could not observe the fire attribute magic. Liszt also gradually felt that the fire-attributed aura in his body was becoming restless, as if the fire-attributed mana here was very active. Of course, this was an illusion. After calming down, he did not find this sign, and the restlessness of his aura also calmed down. I think a little too much. After tens of thousands of years of grinding, I am afraid that except for these bones of the fire dragon, everything else has been lost. Dragon! Fire dragon! Liszt stood up, stepped on the basalt pillar, and approached the bones. He reached out and stroked the rough surface of the bones. There were too many complex and unspeakable emotions in his heart that he wanted to vent. I have a destiny with dragons. Invisible dragons, smoke dragons, and fire dragons. Ordinary people rarely see them, but I have encountered them one after another. It seems that I am destined to ride a dragon in this life. Unfortunately, it was not a metal dragon or a gem dragon that fell here, leaving no metal or gem mineral deposit. But thinking about it, if it was a metal dragon or a gem dragon, without volcanic eruptions, Black Horse Island would probably just be a piece of mud at the bottom of the sea. No matter how rich the mineral deposits were, Liszt would not be able to touch them. Everything he saw had a reason. He thought again. The fire dragon fell here. If it was not killed by him, then the existence of the Valley of the Dragon should be ruled out. The Dragon Spear Chronicles. The dragon of late autumn recorded that when a dragon is old, it will fly to the Valley of the Dragon. There was only an ocean here, there was no Valley of the Dragon. At this time, Marcus, who was in charge of supervising the work, put forward an idea. Sir, I am guessing that since there are 5 bones embedded in these stones, does it mean that there are more bones also embedded in the stones? Is it just that the parts that are exposed to the surface have decayed into pieces? It makes sense. It seems that I have to carefully clean up this bone burial ground. Liszt suddenly felt that his brainwave of naming was very stylish. This is called the bone burial ground. If you have free time, you can flatten the surface and see how many bones you can collect. The bones of the fire dragon, even if they have decayed, are still very hard and are excellent materials. The upcoming bone shop does not have to worry about the lack of suitable raw materials. After figuring out the origin of the bones in the bone burial ground, Liszt felt that there was no need to study it any further. So early the next morning, he set off from Black Horse Island under the illumination of the rising red sun. Of course, he brought back a batch of bone fragments. He had to continue to think about what these bones could be used for besides making bone tools. He always felt that it was a huge waste to use dragon bones to make tools for serfs to farm. After returning to Flower Town, he saw Elk Sun Truth again. The magician came to Flower Town to make the next batch of Valley of Fire magic potions. Liszt had a brainwave and handed him a bone fragment. Mr. Elksun, I recently found a ruin and found a few pieces of bone. Please help me study it and see what kind of creature it belongs to and what kind of use it has. It doesn't matter if the bones have decayed for tens of thousands of years, even if the secret of the dragon bone is exposed. The important thing is to understand its function. Elksun took the bone fragment and nodded. You can rest assured that I will study it when I have free time. In addition, Lord Baron, you asked me to buy a batch of magician's books. I have brought them. There are a total of 56 books. As for the night novels, you can let the caravan buy them. Knowledge, List was eager for it. He wanted to write a chronicle history book of dragons fighting in the wild, and needed a lot of plagiarism, a lot of reference materials. Mages who pursued the truth and refused to lie wrote books that were relatively truthful and broad in content, which had high reference value. Thank you very much. I will let Mr. Carter pay for the books as soon as possible. Chapter 202. Magic books are not the same as night novels. Night novels are stories created by fallen nobles in order to earn a living and for a large number of readers, in pursuit of fun, refreshment, and bizarreness. Magic books are very similar to papers, mainly research reports and experimental notes of the magician. Most of the magic books are poorly readable, and some are even upside down and logically confusing. And the printing quality is relatively poor, and even many magic books are circulated in manuscripts. Not many people are willing to buy them, and naturally there is no money to pay publishers to print them. 56 magic books sent by Elkson. 21 of them are manuscripts. The Diary of 18 Kinds of Red Viper Venom Extraction on Red Mamba Island A Sleet Truth. Is this kind of book really worth reading? He looked at the manuscript in his hand and felt that it was a bit of a loss. Such a book cost 2 silver coins. Forget it, I'll just buy an instruction manual on snake venom. After a few pages, he lost patience and stuffed the book into the gem space. He continued to open the next manuscript. Fredo's Fireball, a book about how to release fireball and improve the craft of fireball. The author, Fredo Truth, turned out to be a magic apprentice, and the only magic he knew was fireball. The book recorded that in order to expand his fireball, he tried more than 100 casting directions. Eventually, he completed the improvement of fireball, making it possible to rub the fireball with the back of his hand. He called this improvement an epoch-making progress, and believed that he would promote the advent of the magic age. Unfortunately, this was a second-hand book, and there was another magician's afterthought in the back of the book. The magician left a disdainful sneer. When you advance to a magician, you will understand that any part of the body can be used as a casting medium. The only difference is that the palm of the hand casts faster. So this book is a negative teaching material? List was quite speechless and threw it directly into the gem space. Looking back and forth, most of the handwritten magic books are more exotic experimental content, which is of little value and is more suitable to be used as a table foot. When he turned to the last manuscript, he suddenly raised his eyebrows. The title of the book was Kennedy's Alchemy Diary. Another alchemy diary. List instantly remembered the shipwrecked treasure he had obtained. There was also an alchemy diary in the chest. It seemed to be called Rudolph's Alchemy Diary, and it was also handwritten with serpentines on the cover. It seems like it's also a handwritten magic book. Restraining his emotions, he began to flip through the diary. The author was a magician who had just advanced. He used many methods to guide magic, trying to turn a stone into gold under the influence of magic. For this reason, he even melted the 7 gold coins he had in order to observe the difference between gold coins and stones. In the end, he still couldn't figure out how to turn stones into gold. Therefore, this was also a negative teaching material for continuous failure. Closing the book, List got up directly, went to the Valley of Fire workshop, and found Elkson. Do magicians like to study alchemy? Elkson put down his work and explained, Baron List, the triangle theory is a recognized truth among magicians, so we always hope to find the most direct evidence to prove the truth of this theory. The Midas touch is the best proof. Why? Because the process of turning stone into gold can be broken down into 2 sets of steps. First, the material stone is transformed into spirit with the help of magic, and then the spirit is transformed into material gold with the help of magic. Therefore, turning stone into gold will strictly verify the correctness of the triangle theory, which is one of the ideals that we magicians pursue all our lives. In that case, Liszt felt a little contradictory. Has the Midas touch ever been successful? I don't know, but many magicians believe that there were real alchemists in ancient times who could turn stone into gold. Why do you have to choose to turn stone into gold? If you want to verify the triangle theory, isn't it possible to refine the properties of other items? Elkson smiled. Baron Liszt, your understanding may be off. Alchemy is just a general term, and turning stone into gold is one of the popular ones. Because we magicians need a lot of money to do experiments, we all like to study turning stone into gold and want to get enough wealth. He spread his hands a little helplessly. But it's not that no one has refined other items, it's just that no one has succeeded. When I first became a magician, I chose to study alchemy, but I gave up in the end. Liszt roughly understood what alchemy was all about. Slightly disappointed, Liszt then asked, "So, many magicians create an alchemy diary?" "Yes." "Well, you continue to work, I won't bother you anymore." He was just about to go out when he turned around again. "Have you studied the bone fragment I gave you?" "I haven't had time to study it yet." "Study it as soon as possible. I'm curious about this kind of fragment." "Of course, as long as I have time." He shook the crystal tube in his hand, meaning that he needed to make the Valley of Fire magic potion first. Back in the castle, Liszt sighed in his heart. Because of the decay of Rudolph's alchemy diary, the knot in his heart has disappeared. It turns out that magicians like to tinker with alchemy and write alchemy diaries. If it was really refined, it would not be circulated in the form of a manuscript. That magician would become a sacred and inviolable existence in the hearts of all magicians, side by side with the sun. Perhaps the Dragon Knight would fight over him. The knot in his heart dissipated. Although he felt relaxed, it also showed that alchemy was probably just a beautiful imagination. Countless magicians studied alchemy one after another, but ultimately did not get any useful information, which showed the difficulty of alchemy. Getting rich overnight was still a dream. For him, it also meant that the dream was shattered. After a moment of entanglement, he quickly adjusted his mentality. "Forget it, I am not a magician, why would I study alchemy?" He threw Kennedy's alchemy diary into the gem space. Liszt continued to read the next magic book. He had finished reading the manuscript, and the rest were printed copies. There were 3 possibilities for a printed magic book. One was that the author was rich and printed it at his own expense. The second was that the book was valuable and the magician was willing to buy it, and the third was that the book was interesting and the aristocrats were willing to buy it. Wild Sprite Worm Market Selling Price, Blind Windblade Wolf King, How to Safely Cross the Midoro Mangrove Forest, Highland White Tower, Carrick Truth. These magic books were obviously of much better quality than the manuscript. Liszt picked up one of them, Wild Sprite Worm Market Selling Price, and read it with relish. The magician who wrote the book lived in Steel City, the capital of the Steel Ridge Kingdom. There was a large wild sprite trading market, and the magician went to the market every day to observe the wild sprites. Chapter 203. The price of sprite worms was generally around 1 or 2,000 gold coins. There were relatively low-value sprite worms, even only a few hundred gold coins, and the high price depended on the species. The highest one recorded in the book was the red holy fruit sprite worm, which was sold for 5,800 gold coins. The reason was that the red holy fruit was a high-value magic ingredient, and if one wanted to expand the scale of cultivation, one must rely on the red holy fruit sprite worm. It was incredible that a sprite worm could reach such a high price with only a 10-year lifespan. If sprite worms could be traded, sprites could not be traded. They were all heirlooms passed down from generation to generation. Even if it was the most worthless weed sprite, no one would be willing to sell it. Just the sprite's beauty was a priceless treasure. All in all, the Wild Sprite Worm Market Selling Price was a magic book with reference value. The dozens of printed magic books that followed were all good and had reference value. He was going to read it slowly. There was no hurry. Dragon Wars in the Wild could not be written in a day. List remembered his identity as a lord looking forward to riding a dragon, not an aristocrat who was down to write novels to make a living. Practicing fighting skills, taking potions walking the dog docen, visiting stupid woman, inspecting the thorns, inspecting the workshop. After completing his daily schedule, he would pick up his brush and write a history book. Occasionally, when he had inspiration, he would go back to the study and write it down. These days, he put more energy into the corn grass field. The serfs of the barley settlement seized the time to cultivate the fields and sow corn grass seeds, while List wandered around the already thriving corn grass, using magic eyes to observe the signs of sprite worm gestation. He believed that once a sprite worm was born, he would definitely be the first to know. At the end of November, it seemed that a cold current had hit, and the temperature in Flower Town suddenly dropped. The servants in the castle changed into new customized overalls. The manservants were still wearing traditional tuxedos, showing the elegance of a gentleman. The maid, on the other hand, ordered Coral City's latest popular modified maid outfit, a headdress named Katiusha, a black loose skirt, a white waist-tight apron, a pair of white pantyhose, and 2 black round-toed leather shoes. It was simple, playful, and cute. List liked it very much. Every day watching the maids with brooms, rags, hand-dusting cleaning, is a pleasure. Especially the original kitchen maid Lily Bathtub. Because of her outstanding work in the kitchen, she was transferred by Mrs. Morrison to the upstairs cleaning maid, and often worked in front of List. Her originally shriveled body grew with the improvement of her quality of life. At the age of 16, her charm was fully blossoming. List couldn't help but feel a sense of respect every time he saw her. Sometimes he thought like an animal. He was the only master in the castle, so he could do whatever he wanted. Why not pounce on him? However, he still calmed his restlessness and turned this impulse into motivation to cultivate his do-chi. Flame dragon drill and waves of flames had already been deeply memorized. Every move was executed without pause. He also gradually became familiar with multiple arrow, and he was already at masterful mastery of dual arrow. He was not far from masterful mastery of triple arrow either. He was still a bit away from mastering multiple arrow, but he was close to mastering ultimate level multiple phantom arrow. When I finish mastering multiple phantom arrow, it will be the moment when multiple arrow completely surpasses Marcus. List held the bow and arrow in his hand, his eyes sharp, staring at the target 100 meters away. His left hand held 3 arrows and his mouth held 3 arrows. Wind speed, humidity, gravity acceleration, do-chi adhesion, calculation complete, shoot. The wind whistled. The 3 arrows were like 3 rays of light side by side. His hands didn't stop moving. He plucked the 3 arrows from his mouth, put them on the bowstring, and shot. The 6 arrows followed one another. Because of their different speeds, they quickly intertwined and completed a complex collision. They all turned and changed their flying angles. Then, the 6 arrows seemed to hit the center of the target at the same time. Steadily, the arrowheads disappeared. I didn't miss the target. List was startled and then became ecstatic. I didn't miss the target. I completed multiple phantom arrow. My archery has already surpassed Marcus. I, List Tulip, have already ascended to the position of divine archer. After the pleasant surprise, he felt a sense of defeat. In the Flower Town, his fighting strength was at another level. He was an extraordinary Earth Knight. Even in the entire Coral Island, he was among the top 10 knights. I am afraid that Levis is no longer my opponent. He is just a pampered elite Earth Knight. Although I have never been on the battlefield, but my archery is superior. Divine Archer meant that his fighting strength was far superior to that of an ordinary knight. However, considering that Levis was gaining experience on the battlefield, he decided to use Marcus as a comparison. An elite Earth Knight like Marcus represented the vast majority of knights who couldn't afford to take drugs. The only way they could improve their fighting strength was by constantly polishing their fighting skills. My total amount of chi has already surpassed Marcus by a large margin. My archery has also surpassed his. I still have the red blood sword to increase the power of the chi secret manual. He pulled out the red blood sword with a clang. List looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle and whispered, "I want to fight 10 of such Marcus." Marcus was still on Black Horse Island and could not fight with List, but there were still 2 Earth Knights in Flower Town, Rondo Kettle and Russell Steele. "You will train with me in actual combat. Rondo will go first." "Yes, Lord Baron," Rondo answered seriously. He was older than List, so he was not very nervous. On the contrary, he looked a little relaxed. After all, in everyone's impression, List had only broken through to the Earth Knight level for more than half a year. Although he was relying on Trembling Woods to show off his might, his own combat power was probably limited. Even if he was riding on a divine horse, there was nothing to fear. "Are you ready, Rondo?" "Lord Baron, I can start at any time." "Then, Russell, you are in charge of the referee." "Yes, Lord Baron." "Rondo, please listen to my command," Russell said loudly. "In the name of the Knight's glory, get ready, start." With a command, List and Rondo, who were 100 meters apart, each drove their mounts and began to charge. At this moment, Rondo was relaxed. He had a lot of actual combat experience. List, on the opposite side, was a little nervous. After all, it was his first actual combat exercise, and his body was a little tense. He took a deep breath. He waved the knight's spear, and when the 2 sides were about to pass each other, he stabbed fiercely. Fire Dragon Sweep. Bang! The knight's spear burst into flames, and his moves were fierce, colliding with Rondo's knight's spear. Then the flames dissipated, and the 2 spears were swung away. Rondo's body shook a little on the horse's back, and soon stabilized. List did not shake his body, but his hand holding the knight's spear was almost twisted by the recoil. Because he was nervous, he did not control his strength well, and half of the recoil came from his own strength. "I made a mistake." His heart was clear. Although he was annoyed by this low-level mistake, his nervousness dissipated a lot. "Rondo's strength is much weaker than I thought, or rather, my strength is far beyond his. An elite Earth Knight against an ordinary Earth Knight should have a crushing momentum." He figured this out. He no longer had any nervousness and suddenly shouted, again. Chapter 204. Bang Bang. The knight's spear collided again, and Londo felt that his hands had begun to tremble. The force from the spear was unimaginably huge and scorching. With just 2 blows, he had realized that he had underestimated the young lord of Flower Town. Is this the difference in bloodline? He is only 16 years old, and I am already 21 years old, but I can't even stop 2 of his spears. Londo's heart was cold, and even despair was rising. As an illegitimate child, the only thing he was proud of was that he had noble blood. But this most proud point, in front of List, had no possibility of being proud at all. The other party was the Count's son, the Sky Knight's blood, and the grandson of the Marquis. "Come again." List's shout pulled Londo's thoughts back. He quickly pulled back his horse, restrained the trembling of his arms, and faced the spear. His relaxed state of mind was no longer there, only full of caution and bitterness. As an Earth attribute Earth Knight, Londo had always been good at defense. It was really difficult for an Earth Knight of the same level to beat him in a short period of time. But facing List, he seriously suspected that he could not stop the third shot. This was indeed the case. When the 2 steel spears collided, he only felt a strong force, followed by a scorching heat like a raging fire, forcing him to hold the spear. Bang! The knight's spear flew high, and Londo himself flew up. The sky was spinning violently. Before his brain could react, he had fallen heavily to the ground. His internal organs shook fiercely, and his breath was stuffy in his chest. He stared at the sky blankly and did not stand up for a long time. He couldn't figure out how he was defeated in 3 shots. On the other side, List shook his head. He felt that Londo's strength was weaker with each shot, and the 3rd shot was simply too weak to withstand a single blow. He did not even use half of his strength, and Londo was sent flying. If he used all his strength, this shot could pierce a hole in Londo's body and hang on the spear. Since he was not satisfied, he looked at Russell and said, "Russell, you do it." Russell's scalp was numb. He saw clearly how List sent Randy flying with 3 shots. He knew that he would not be his opponent, but he had to accept the challenge. Russell challenges Lord Baron. The 2 horses crossed each other. Fighting spirit erupted, but flames erupted. Russell's whole body flew out like a broken kite in the flame-fighting spirit, following in Randy's footsteps. Moreover, List had only fired the 1st shot. Russell lay on the ground and wanted to say something. He opened his mouth but could not speak. After a while, Randy and Russell finally recovered from the blow and looked at List's eyes. There was no longer the same mentality, only the awe of the strong. List's bloodline was nobler than theirs, his status was higher than theirs, and he was stronger than theirs as well. They had no choice but to respect him. "I'm stronger than I thought. I've always underestimated myself." He was delighted. On the surface, List did not show it. The soul of an adult knew how to restrain his emotions. He just said lightly, "Since leaving the Knight Academy, I have not had actual combat training with anyone. We did not show all our strength in the battle just now. This time, you 2 come together, let's train again." "Yes, Lord Baron." The 2 responded in unison. Then a battle of 1 against 2 began, and the double attack hit. List was also flustered at first. But the gap in strength was too obvious. After 2 rounds of charging, he adapted to the double attack. A steel knight's spear waved flames all over the sky. Clang! Clang! After 2 blows, Randy and Russell each flew again and fell heavily to the ground. The 2 of them were not enough to pose a threat to List. After the 2 got up, List did not show the joy of victory. He still had the usual standard aristocratic smile. "That's all for today's training. You have just arrived in Flower Town and don't have enough team members to practice together. For the time being, polish your fighting spirit. If you want to go to the battlefield, there is indeed a gap in your level." Both of them more or less had the heart to pick up beans. They felt that Flower Town was short of people. If they joined early, they could follow and pick up the credit. But today's training made them realize that if they were not strong enough, they would not get a good result no matter where they went. Putting away the frivolity in his heart, he solemnly responded, "Yes, Lord Baron." They had not yet chosen their allegiance, and similarly, List had not accepted them. Whether they could establish a master-follower relationship in the future depended on their performance. Judging from their current performance, List really looked down on them. Of course, he did not directly deny the 2. He intended to wait for Marcus to come back and fight with Marcus to see how strong he was. Marcus's combat effectiveness had clearly reached the level of Coral Island's elite knight. The Count had assigned him to guard List and serve as List's tutor because of this. Therefore, Marcus could be used as a yardstick. Everyone dispersed. They returned. This was a battle. It may not be too enjoyable, but the process was hardy. After taking a bath, List leaned back in the living room chair, recalling the details of the battle and thinking about where to improve. Good at summarizing can better find out their own shortcomings, improve and make progress. When recalling, he may be a little distracted. The smoke mission quietly emerged and quickly attracted List's attention. Mission completed. Reward: a corn grass sprite worm. There was no surprise reward, no surprise corn grass sprite worm. It seems that the work of cultivating 100 acres of corn grass has been completed. Very good, corn grass sprite worm, my 10th sprite worm. No, it's the 9th sprite worm. The thorns sprite worm has evolved into a thorns lesser sprite. He waved his hand. A new smoke mission had been issued. Mission: haven't you eaten enough barbecue and seafood? As a noble lord, the diet must be nutritious. How can there be no chicken, fish, and eggs? This year's grain harvest, please raise more than 1,000 chickens in Flower Town to provide enough eggs and chicken. Reward: special mineral load. Huh! Special mineral load? List was pleasantly surprised. The reward is a mineral load. The last reward was a super small saltpeter mine, and this time it is a special mineral load. I don't know what kind of mineral load it is. By the way, is it related to the basalt pillars? He could think that the main body of Black Horse Island, composed of basalt pillars, was probably related to the mineral load. Perhaps the special mineral load was buried in these basalt pillars. Whatever it is. Chapter 205. With magic eyes, as long as a sprite worm was born, List could not escape his eyes. The corngrass sprite worm also did not escape his observation. At the edge of the cornfield, there was an inconspicuous corngrass with faint traces of magic power on its ears. I've finally found you. Grow up quickly and work for me. After List confirmed it, he immediately summoned Insect Officer Rome Winebarrel and told him, "This corngrass is in the process of brewing a corngrass sprite worm. Remember to arrange insect guards to watch over it day and night. Don't make any mistakes." "Rest assured, sir, Rum will personally take care of it. The corngrass sprite worm will definitely be nurtured smoothly without any disturbance," Rome replied happily. Witnessing the birth of a new sprite worm had become a daily occurrence in the Flower Town. This was indeed a place blessed by the glory of the night. List then ordered the barley settlement's steward, Gajiel, "Don't forget to fertilize and water the cordyceps. If there are any signs of disease or wilting, inform me immediately." As long as there was adequate nutrition and meticulous care, the gestation of a sprite worm would normally take 10 days to half a month. Most of them suffered from dystocia or miscarriage due to various reasons, such as not being discovered or not being nurtured properly. But in the Flower Town there was no such problem. 1 lesser sprite and 9 sprite worms. The number of sprites in my territory is about to catch up with Elvira. He thought happily. Surpassing her was only a matter of time. When Elvira was in theft, she received a tulip lesser sprite and 12 sprite worms. In the following 3 years, she lost a sprite worm, but 2 more sprite worms were born in her territory. Therefore, she now had 13 sprite worms. The maintenance of these elves allowed Falcon Town to remain prosperous. However, Falcon Town's potential was far inferior to Flower Town's. There was no monopoly business that could bring cash flow, such as seafood and flower soap. There was no rich variety of potions. She only had the tulip potion, which was the black tulip given to her by List. There was no intermediate World of Warcraft or dragon horse. Even if she trained a night squad, it would be an ordinary team. Flower Town had black blood horses, and the night squad formed in the future would definitely be comparable to an elite team like the Coral City Orders of Chivalry. Of course, Elvira was not List's goal. He did not want to compare himself with a woman. He cared more about when he could surpass Levis. Levis broke through the Earth Knight realm before he reached adulthood. His talent was praised, but I have already caught up. I am also an elite Earth Knight. Now my goal is the same as his, to advance to a Sky Knight. The path of potions was smooth, which made List full of pride. The Sky Knight is easy for me. The Count is called the Wave Sword Saint by the people of the Eagle Kingdom. In the future, I will be known as the Flame Sword Saint. The knight mainly used a gun to charge on horseback. In a one-on-one fight, the sword was the main weapon. Sky Knights no longer needed to charge together with the main force. A single person and a single sword could sweep away an ordinary group of 100 knights. That was why they called themselves Sword Saints and were known as Sword Saint. Now, the future Flame Sword Saint List Tulip was heading to the office to convene a meeting of the town's officials. Advisor Gort and everyone, I intend to promote farmers' chicken farming in Flower Town. He was too lazy to make excuses for his ideas. He directly ordered what the smoke mission required. Anyway, no one dared to question him. In the next half a month, the scale of breeding should reach 1,500. Raising chickens was not a simple job, and the mortality rate was not low. This had to be taken into account. After a pause, he continued, chickens are raised for the castle. The castle subsidizes the feed for the chick. After they are raised, the castle will take them back. However, the eggs laid by the hens during this period will be recovered by the castle at the market price as a reward for the farmers raising the chickens. Do you have anything to add? Sir, in this way, it seems that no farmers are willing to raise roosters, or do we only raise hens? Isaiah asked. He knew that even without roosters, hens would lay eggs. But without a rooster to mate, hens could not lay eggs and could not hatch chick. List answered without thinking, said a standard. Farmers who are willing to raise chickens must raise 9 hens with 1 rooster. Those who have the conditions can try to hatch their own chick. These chicks belong to the farmers themselves. Of course, you also have to review. Those who do not have the conditions to raise chickens are not allowed to raise chickens. Winter was coming. If they could not even build a chicken coop, then raising chickens would only freeze them to death. If they were willing to let the chickens live with people, then there was no need for a chicken coop. After a brief discussion, the chicken raising operation was launched. 1,500 chickens were divided among the household. It was easy to pick out farmers suitable for raising chickens. At the same time, the Flower Caravan and the Thorns Caravan were also notified to purchase chicken seedlings from major cities, and even mature chickens, and send them to the Flower Town. Within half a month, it should not be a problem to raise 1,000 chickens before the arrival of the winter snow. Gort counted on his fingers. In previous years, the temperature would drop and snow would fall in the Flower Town in mid-December. Then it would continue intermittently for 2 months. By mid-February next year, the temperature would begin to rise. List swirled the red wine in his glass. This was the castle banquet, not only the Flower Town, but also half of the Coral Island. However, the Flower Town, located in the northeasternmost corner, would be the most seriously affected. He guessed that the snow was probably brought about by a small cold current. On Earth, the temperature would often plummet with the arrival of a cold current. This world was not clear, but the general principle should not be very different. The Coral Island was an island and would be deeply affected by the cold current, even if it was only a small cold current. By the way, Advisor Gort, how is the preparation for the winter cold going? Oh, please rest assured, for the sake of my pitiful salary, no serfs will freeze to death in the Flower Town this year. I swear by the glory of the night. If one freezes to death, I will personally go to the Eagle Kingdom and catch a serf. Gort said exaggeratedly. He was actually trying to amuse and lighten the atmosphere of the banquet. Since List gradually turned the banquet into a work meeting, the explosive atmosphere of a normal aristocratic banquet had rarely appeared. Everyone was used to eating and drinking. This was probably related to List's quiet temperament. On the other hand, Gort liked liveliness. Elegantly cutting the steak, List, unaffected by Gort, continued to maintain his usual quiet temperament. The cold protection work is only part of the winter strategy. This winter, the serfs cannot be left idle. We must continue to carry out projects to transform the infrastructure of the Flower Town. Chapter 206. Elk Sun still took the time to study the bone fragments handed over by List. Of course, he is not a scientist after all. He is just a magician whose passion for communication is greater than his pursuit of truth. After a few days of fiddling, he handed the fragments back to List. Baron List, according to my judgment, this is the remains of a huge creature. Over the years, the magic attached to the bones has completely dissipated, so it can probably still be used to make bone tools. The hardness is very good, not much worse than iron. He gracefully saluted. In addition, thank you for your generous hospitality. I have finished making a new batch of flame mushroom magic potions, so I will say goodbye to you. Well, next time you come, don't forget to continue to buy magic books for me. No problem. Elk Sun left lightly, presumably going back to Coral City. Magicians are also human beings. They can go to brothels and continue to explore the truth of life without getting married. In front of the apple table, there were a few snacks and pastries. Dosen lay on the edge of the table, staring at the pastries, wanting to eat but not daring to stretch his head. A beautiful white elf, Ella, swayed on the apple tree. With List watching from the side, it did not tie up Trembling Woods. Instead, it dozed off on the tree. Occasionally, leaves fell, and it flew out, chasing the leaves, entertaining itself. On the chair under the tree, List leaned back and turned the dragon bone fragments in his hand, looking a little disappointed. It seems that it can only be used to make bone tools for the serfs to plow the fields. Alas, dragon bones are such precious things, they are used for farming, what a waste! Butler Carter came over and reported, Master, there are a total of 20 carts of bone fragments, all of which have been transported into the warehouse and stacked neatly. Do you want to count them yourself? No, Mr. Carter, I am very relieved that you can check for me. Carter smiled reservedly. Thank you for your trust, Master. It is my honor to serve the castle. Don't forget to tell Harpagon and Sherlock about the search for bone craftsmen. The bone shop has begun construction, but the bone craftsmen have not arrived yet. Also, help me find out more about the signs of competition between the two. I don't want the two caravans to have a conflict because of the sale of the flower soap. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on Harpagon and Sherlock. List nodded and said to himself, what businessmen need is control. Once they are given extra power, they will get carried away. This is not good. He also gradually began to hate the merchant. Sure enough, well-behaved farmers were the Lord's favorite subjects. Merchants were active and their ambitions would always expand from time to time. Because the production of flower soap was temporarily limited, in order to limit the other side, the two even bribed Burnell to suppress their opponents. They completely forgot about List's intention to cooperate with them. Punishment had to be meted out. He was prepared to have old Grandette come out of retirement once more, reorganize the two caravans, and reduce their independent power. He was going to promote a few natives of the flower town to serve as important backbones of the caravan, to supervise and restrain Harpagon and Sherlock. It would be great if we had the 3-corpse brain pill. We could give them one each and they wouldn't need to use any tricks to restrict them. They would be obedient. The Sun Moon Church's art of control was better than fear, and fear was better than taking medicine. List was very envious. Without the 3-corpse brain pill, it would be great if I could learn the life and death charm of Tianshan Tonglao. He couldn't help but think. There was internal strength in martial arts books, and there was magic in this world. Could it be possible to develop magic and chi to achieve the effect of the life and death charm or the 3-corpse brain pill? At least the magic contract, in a sense, had some control over life and death. He took out the thick bast paper. He wrote a few serpentines on it, life and death control magic chi, or contract development plan. Then he stuffed the thick bast paper into the space gem. For the time being, it was just a thought. He didn't have the ability to develop it. Perhaps it would not be too late to develop it later. The return of the flower brought half of the ship's bone fragments. This was only a small part of the bone fragments from the boneyard, but they were piled up in a newly built warehouse. With such sufficient raw materials, the amount of bone tools that could be forged would be massive. The primitive farming civilization of the flower town would leap to a new level of civilization after the farming tools were ready. At that time, a serf could cultivate more farmland and make use of all the empty wastelands of the flower town. When the last batch of bone fragments was delivered to the town by the flower, it was already close to mid-December. A bonesmith in the Coral City, Blake Bonesmith, under the temptation of a large sum of money, finally agreed to go to the flower town to preside over the bonesmith shop, forge bone tools for the flower town, and teach apprentices. His family also came with him. His wife, 2 sons, daughter-in-law, and a newborn grandson. This family all had the skills of a bonesmith. Of course, it was not exquisite. Therefore, they could not compete with the other bonesmith shops in the Coral City, which was why they were willing to come to the rural town. Blake, do your best and work for me. The return you will get is far greater than your efforts. List met with Blake. Your 2 sons are already fixed and have no development potential. However, when your grandson grows up, I can make an exception and let him train with the knight and become my retainer knight. Throwing out the opportunity to become an aristocrat, this move was always successful. Blake knelt down excitedly. I am willing to work for the Sir Lord and do my best. Very well, in the future you will be proud of today's choice. The bonesmith Blake was fooled. Isaiah sent another piece of good news. The flower town's scale of raising chickens officially crossed the 1,000 mark. After hearing about the benefits of raising chickens, all the farmers enthusiastically signed up, knowing that eggs were good things. However, chicken seedlings were not easy to buy. Most of them were saved from the rural farmers' homes one by one. Before the winter snow arrived, 1,000 were barely saved up. Mission completed. Reward: Fire Attribute Mineral Vein. The smoke mission was followed up in time, and the mission reward was issued. It was a mineral vein that List had never heard of. Fire Attribute Mineral Vein, what kind of ore is this? It sounds very valuable. It seems to have something to do with the dead fire dragon? It should be on Black Horse Island. It is likely that when Marcus led people to excavate the fragments, he found this kind of fire attribute mineral vein underground. Fire dragon, fire attribute mineral vein, List could not help but link the two together. However, in the description of the dragon, the elemental dragon did not produce minerals. He had never heard of a fire dragon that could produce this kind of fire attribute mineral vein. When Marcus comes back, I will ask him what ore vein he found. If he didn't find it, then I will have to immediately send people to search and excavate it. I have a feeling that the fire-attributed core is very important to me. After all, I am a fire-attributed chi. Thoughts flashed. Chapter 207. Looking at the contents of the smoke serpentines in front of him, List frowned deeply. Mission: The female monkeys in the fruit-stealing monkey training ground are about to give birth. The fruit farmer's skills in picking fragrant coconuts will come in handy, but natural reproduction is not as fast as wild capture. Please expand the size of the monkey group to 30. Reward: A thief who spies on the Lord. There was no problem with the content of the mission itself, and it was not difficult to expand the monkey group. If you buy monkeys from other places, as long as you pay enough money, there will always be hunters who catch monkeys and sell them. But the reward puzzled him. A thief who spies on the Lord, what does this want? He had always believed that the flower town was a paradise on the Coral Island. With the protection of the Tulip family's bloodline, no one would have any ideas about the flower town. But this mission reward was directed at List himself. There was a thief who was ready to spy on him. Is it to remind me that there is a thief who is going to harm me? List shook his head, not believing this possibility. Obviously, the smoke mission will not be so straightforward. Perhaps this is the same as the Invisible Dragon chain mission? It is a reward for the invasion of the Invisible Dragon, but in fact it is a space gem. With his exploration and knowledge of the smoke mission, this possibility is very high. But in any case, the security and defense of the territory must be strengthened. Although the essence of the smoke mission is to reward me, if there is a thief, I will have to bear the loss myself. The smoke mission is just a choice of fate. I am afraid it will not work if I am not prepared. He informed the caravan to buy monkeys. He summoned Karl and Ram and ordered them to strengthen the management of the patrols and insect protection teams and pay strict attention to all movements in the territory. Marcus was in charge of the work on Black Horse Island, so he temporarily let the two retainer Knight and Xavier maintain the castle's patrol security. He also told the butler, Carter, to pay attention to check the people entering and leaving the castle, whether they were servants, territorial officials, or officers. Once there was a suspicious person trying to sneak into the castle, he was to be notified immediately. "Master, are you aware of something?" Carter was puzzled by List's orders and seemed a little nervous. List nodded. "The Flower Town's development is very rapid. In less than a year, it has already changed its appearance. If it were any other territory, I would also have some thoughts that I shouldn't have. The winter snow is about to descend, and I don't want anything unpleasant to happen at the last moment. I understand. I will strictly instruct the servants to protect the safety of the castle." "Yes," List replied absent-mindedly. He walked to the window and looked at the gloomy sky outside. The temperature had begun to drop and the cold current had arrived. The sunny days of Flower Town were about to pass, and the annual 2-month-long ice and snow covered the town. He looked into the distance and saw a field of black nightshade. At the edge of the black nightshade field, a group of serfs were working in full swing. They were building an ice cellar. Building an ice cellar wasn't easy, as it required a lot of construction skills to build an underground cellar that could store ice cubes. More importantly, the construction process would cost a lot of gold coins. List dared to build an ice cellar, of course, because he had a profitable business and was full of confidence. For this reason, he contacted Tulip Castle and invited the island's master craftsmen and architects to preside over the construction of the ice cellar. This architect, Mbappe Gravel, was a distant relative of Viscount Jonas Gravel of Gravel Castle. It was he who presided over the construction of the magnificent Tulip Castle. After coming to Flower Town, he took a fancy to Dawson's rockthorns at first glance. Baron List, with Dawson's rockthorns, the difficulty of building an ice cellar will be greatly reduced and the speed will be greatly accelerated. This is a natural cellar support pillar. The rockthorns released by Dawson each reached a height of 2.5 meters, sharp at the top and thick at the bottom, with the thickest reaching a diameter of about 40 centimeters. It could release at least 200 rockthorns a day. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a small rock dragon. Dawson Avenue has long been completed, and rockthorns are still produced every day, almost piling up into a mountain. Therefore, in the future, if List wants to build a new castle, there is no shortage of materials. Then again, the basalt on Black Horse Island is also a good building material. This year, I will build 3 ice rooms for your cellar, which is almost enough. If you want to continue to expand, you can wait until next year. As long as you have money, you can build any big ice cellar. The ice cellar of Tulip Castle has 25 ice rooms. Mbappe Gravel did not care much about this small project. He only occasionally came to supervise the work, and the serfs and his apprentices were working. The ice room is a room in the ice cellar used to store ice. A standard ice room can store 300 cubic meters of ice, which is equivalent to the size of a house of 100 square meters. 3 ice rooms, 900 cubic meters, plus a little saltpeter left. There is no need to worry about ice in Flower Town next summer. When Carter brought him a cup of coffee, List took his eyes back from the window, sat back in his chair, and smiled a little self-deprecatingly. "Mr. Carter, do you think we are like squirrels going through the winter? When autumn comes, we start looking for food to hide and eat in the winter." Carter responded a little playfully, "I think squirrels are a very smart little animal. Other animals can only starve during the winter, but they can hide in their caves and eat a little of their own hard-earned food every day. This kind of life is actually what the civilians of the town look forward to." He went on to say, "Your arrival has made Flower Town rich and brought them the life they want." List quite likes to listen to this kind of flattery. Although he is no longer pure, and all the interests are based on himself and his aristocratic identity, he thinks that he has really made the civilians of Flower Town live a good life. It is natural for the people to thank him, respect him, and worship him. If you don't have these three feelings, then you are an ungrateful ingrate. They are my people. As a lord, it is my duty to lead them to a happy life," List said lightly. His expression was calm. There was no complacency, no compassion, only the nobility that aristocrats should show. If it was an ugly aristocrat, no matter how noble it is, it would be the same thing. But with List's handsome face, it directly exudes a great personal charm. Carter was immediately excited. "You have inherited all the nobility of the Tulip family and the Taro family. May the glory of the night always look after you." The touching performance in the castle continued. On the vast sea outside Coral Island, several sailboats with red tulip flags were braving the wind and wave. The cabin was filled with ragged, sallow, and emaciated serfs, who reeked of a horrible stench. These serfs seemed to have lost their spirit, lying weakly on the planks, motionless for a long time. "It's time to eat, it's time to eat." The shouts of the sailors came from afar. The serfs, who were half dead just now, quickly changed their state and rushed out of the cabin. A little female slave, about 8 or 9 years old, was knocked down by the serf next to her and fell to the ground. Watching as the others squeezed out of the cabin to get food, tears welled up in her eyes and quickly rolled down her dirty cheek. Suddenly, Chapter 208. Wiping away the slave girl's tears with her thumb, the owner of the hand said in a hoarse voice, "Get up." The slave girl raised her head and saw a face with a scarf on it. Her hair was messy and the scarf was dirty, but the exposed eyes were so bright that the slave girl could not open her eyes. She was wearing a leather armor that had been worn for many years, and the edges of the armor had been worn thin. She carried a big sword on her back, and the hilt was wrapped in rags. Her chest was tightened by the leather armor. Because she squatted down, her knees touched and squeezed, and the threads of the leather armor almost burst. After wiping the slave girl's tears, she stood up. She was tall. Her clothes looked a little sloppy, but it revealed a strange, wild temperament. This made the slave girl quickly remember the group of people who rushed into the village, killed, robbed, separated her from her family, and took her to the serf market. According to the serfs in the market, that group of people were evil mercenaries, and the woman in front of her was like a mercenary. Ah! Frightened, the slave girl seemed to have gained strength. She struggled to get up from the ground and apologized in a panic. "I'm sorry, madam. I didn't mean to fall." The mercenary looked at her and said in a hoarse voice again, "You didn't do anything wrong. Why should you apologize?" The slave girl did not know how to answer. She was so flustered that she wanted to cry again. "Come with me," the mercenary said in an unquestioning tone and turned to leave the cabin. The slave girl was hesitant, but she did not dare to not follow the other party. She lowered her head and did not even dare to look at the mercenary's back. The mercenary seemed to be walking in the direction of the cafeteria. On the way, she suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "Girls have to learn to be strong, especially when walking alone." The slave girl did not know how to answer, but it seemed that the mercenary did not expect her to answer. In a flash, she walked to the cafeteria. The mercenary pushed away the crowded serfs, took the slave girl to the window to get food, and shouted, "Fat Jack, get her a meal!" "Ah yes, Captain Swan." While speaking, the mercenary had turned around and was ready to leave. The slave girl stood in front of the window, not knowing whether she should get food or follow the maid. Until Fat Pig Jack put a semi-liquid food on a wooden plate and stuffed it into her arms. "Take it, I don't know what's wrong with Captain Swan, but he's helping the serfs get food again." Holding the fragrant rice, the slave girl felt that she was about to cry again. This time, she was so happy that she wanted to cry. His daily meal had never been as full as today. She whispered in a mosquito-like voice, "Thank you." She didn't know if she was speaking to Pig Jack or to Captain Swan. But she squatted in the corner of the deck and ate the food mixed with beans and flour. The name, Captain Swan, was firmly engraved in her heart. She couldn't understand the serpentine between the mercenary and the sailor. She only remembered the pronunciation of Fat Pig Jack's name for the mercenary. Captain Swan is very sympathetic to the slave girl? On the bow deck, the female mercenary was enjoying the sea breeze. The second mate of the ship walked forward and asked in what he thought was an elegant manner, "Why can't I?" "Of course not. On the contrary, such a move is heartwarming. I can see that under Captain Swan's tough style, there is a soft female heart." The mercenary didn't answer the topic and just looked at the sea. The second mate was not reconciled and said, "I've seen you help several of these little slave girls. Do you see your own shadow in them? People tend to reminisce about their past selves. Did you have such a childhood?" "Sorry, I didn't mean to mention it. I just wanted to know more about you, Captain Swan." A moment later, just when the second mate thought he had failed, the mercenary looked at the seagulls on the sea and slowly said, "I have a sister. I haven't seen her for 4 years. If she were still alive, she would be the same age as the slave girl." "Well, I see. Parting from family is indeed." Not waiting for the second mate to answer, the mercenary suddenly changed her tone and said impatiently, "Now that your curiosity has been satisfied, can you get out of here?" "Ah, don't be like that, Captain Swan. I know you're in a bad mood now," the second mate said, reaching out and trying to pat her on the shoulder. "I just want to comfort you, or I can lend you a shoulder." But not waiting for his hand to touch her shoulder, the mercenary suddenly hit the second mate 2 meters away with an elbow. "Get out. You!" The second mate was angry. He was greeted by the cold eyes of the mercenary and a hoarse voice, "Don't bother me if you don't want to die. I believe the captain won't care if a few bodies are left at sea." The second mate was full of anger, but he immediately choked back, rubbed his chest, and walked down the deck unwillingly. When he entered the cabin where the sailors rested, he was immediately laughed at by a group of disheveled sailors. "Speak, look, the best performance of overestimating yourself. Ha ha, with your pockmarked face you dare to provoke Captain Swan. It's so funny. Don't be discouraged, Speak, you lasted 2 minutes longer than Fox. Spick didn't last more than 5 minutes. The loser pays for it consciously. In order to celebrate Speak's failure, I've decided to have another sip of watered-down gin, haha." The sailors in the cabin laughed rudely. The mercenary didn't hear it. She leaned on the railing of the deck, watching the bow break the waves, and her thoughts drifted away. Coral Island. Flower Town. Little Maggie. At the same time. The place she was looking forward to. In the castle, the gray-haired butler Carter walked over to the lord who was writing the historical epic of dragons fighting in the wild, and said, "Master, there is one thing you should be happy to hear." "What is it?" Liszt, who was writing a historical account of the evil fire dragon and the powerful dragon knight fought in the blue waves sea, asked without looking up. "The castle's trainee maid, Maggie, has become a contract mother and daughter with Mrs. Harriet of the grocery store." He heard the news about Maggie. List put down his quill pen, raised his eyebrows and asked, "So, what's the plan of Harriet's family, to take Maggie back and stop the internship?" Maggie was a clue related to the smoke mission. He spent a lot of excuses to transfer Maggie to his side. He didn't want to let Maggie go casually. Carter's answer made him breathe a sigh of relief. "Of course not, Master. It is a great honor for civilians to be able to work in the castle. Harriet's family is reluctant to give up such a good opportunity." "Well, Mr. Carter, congratulate Maggie for me. By the way, will she come to the internship this afternoon?" "She didn't ask for leave. She should be doing the internship as usual." "Well, give her a grilled steak for dinner." Chapter 209. December 13th, early morning. For the monkeys in the fruit-stealing monkey training ground, the first snow of the year came with the arrival of new members. The monkeys that the Sir Lord ordered to buy had not yet arrived, but the 3 pregnant female monkeys had already given birth to baby monkeys, a total of 4, and one of the female monkeys was pregnant with twins. Perhaps the Flower Town was really a place blessed by the night's glory, as the 4 little monkeys had all survived. They could just see the first snow of Flower Town, mixed with the whistling north wind. Squeak! Squeak! The monkeys cheered for the arrival of the snow in their own language. When the snow came, the fragrant coconut trees would stop growing, and the fragrant coconuts would no longer ripen. They stole fragrant coconuts all year round and knew this very well. The fragrant coconuts would no longer ripen, which meant that they didn't have to work this winter. Unfortunately, such an idea was ridiculous. Early in the morning, Jiggs, the manager of the training ground, took out fake fragrant coconuts and began training day after day. Sir Lord will buy more monkeys, and when the time comes, this group of fruit-stealing monkeys will be the model for the new monkeys to imitate, so everyone, be sure to train well and let the fruit-stealing monkeys be role models. Jiggs shouted loudly. In the training ground, he enjoyed the authority of a leader. Several other fruit farmers had to listen to him. "The female monkey I trained can't train any more today. She has to feed her own children." "Then you go shovel the snow." "Why do we have to shovel the snow? We don't shovel the snow every year. It's better to just stay in the house," a fruit farmer said indifferently. Giggs immediately said angrily, "Correct your attitude. Consultant Gort has already announced to the entire town that all farms and workshops must shovel the snow in front of their doors and work areas. After that, they must also shovel the snow on the roads nearby." "You fool, do you dare to disobey the advisor's orders?" The fruit farmer certainly didn't dare to disobey, but he dared to complain to Jiggs. "Why didn't you say so earlier? If you had said so earlier, I wouldn't have let the snow pile up in the training ground." Although he complained, he still took the broom he made in the farm and began to shovel the snow. It was just one night of snow, so the snow was not thick and could be swept away with a broom. Just like the fruit-stealing monkeys' training ground, the entire Flower Town began a mighty snow-shoveling battle at dawn. The patrols beat gongs and drums and went from house to house urging the serfs to get up and shovel the snow. The snow on the roads must be shoveled first to prevent the carriage from moving and the construction of the territory from being delayed. This winter was destined to not be peaceful. Many meetings had been held in the castle and the administrative office to plan the construction works for the winter. Stretching, List was a little reluctant to get up from the bed. It started to snow last night, and the temperature had dropped to the point where he needed to wear thick clothes, so he had already covered himself with a quilt. Although the Earth Knight was resistant to cold and heat, no one would be stupid enough to be frozen. Of course, he needed a warm quilt. However, with his strong willpower, he resisted the corrosion of the bed and got up to open the door. The male servant and female servant were already waiting outside the door. The manservant Thomas had to help him get dressed, while the maid was responsible for cleaning the room. "Good morning, master." Thomas saluted with the leather armor in his hand. Little Lily, carrying a bucket, a duster, and a mop, also bowed to List. "Good morning, master." "Good morning." List was used to being helped to get dressed. He carefully tidied up his appearance in front of the mirror, then hurried out of the bedroom to walk the dog outside. Before he went out, he heard a cry. It was the thorny sprite, Ella, who flew out of the worm room and went out with him. List smiled and touched Ella's little head. "Ella, I'll take you to see the snow." "Wow!" Ella's eyes were wide open, and it was curious. It had never seen snow before. This was the first time it had seen snow since it was born. As soon as it left the castle, it flew around excitedly, fiddling with the snow on the ground, trees, and windows from time to time. Woof! Dosen stood at the door of the kennel and barked excitedly. It was also the first time it had seen snow. However, it should have seen enough last night. Now it probably saw List and knew that it could have fun, so it was excited. Dosen's chain was untied. Intermediate World of Warcraft, which had been raised as a watchdog, flew out in one stride, shaking its head and tail in the snow, playing with the snow. Clatter! A small snowball hit Dosen's head. Ella learned from List and pinched a snowball to have a snowball fight. But its hand was too small, and the snowball was even smaller. Dosen didn't feel anything at all. Seeing that Dosen ignored it, it was furious and raised its hand to sow the seeds. However, the telepathic List felt its emotions and immediately stopped its behavior. "Ella, play with the snow, don't scatter seeds." Since it was so naughty, he might as well take it to the Thorns Ridge to plant trees. Then, he pinched a large snowball himself and threw it. Clatter! It hit Dosen's big head. Trembling Woods stared blankly for a moment. It looked around, but it didn't know who hit it. A few seconds later, its attention shifted and it began to roll in the snow again. The snow was thin, so it just pressed its body and the snow melted, revealing the alfalfa underneath. It was rolling snow, but it was actually rolling grass. Very childish behavior, but considering that it was not even a year old, it was normal to be childish. Leaving Dosen and Ella to play with the snow, List began his daily cultivation class. The plan of a day is in the morning, the plan of a lifetime is in the diligence, and the polishing of chi is the work of water. If you want to become a flying sky knight and be known as a sword saint, you have to work hard. After the cultivation class, he returned to the castle to take a bath and change into formal noble clothes. He let the servants move the table to the window, leisurely eat breakfast, and enjoy the scene of the servants shoveling the snow. This is the tranquility of the countryside, which he could not enjoy before crossing over. Of course, the prosperity and charm of modern civilization is also incomparable to this backward world. He sometimes asks himself, if he was given a choice now, would he go back to his original life or stay as an aristocrat? For the first 2 months in Flower Town, he would choose to go back. Now, he will not hesitate to choose to stay and continue his unfinished dragon riding career. It's just that I miss soybean milk, fried dough sticks, and porridge buns. By the way, why don't I let Mrs. Abby and the bakery's Rainer invent the buns? They were all pasta, but the pasta made from wheat flour was not just bread. Steamed buns, flour rolls, dumplings, wontons, noodles, pancakes, fried dough sticks, glutinous rice balls, shumai, ramen, these are common noodles. Although List was originally a southerner and did not eat much noodles, dumplings and steamed buns were obviously more in line with his taste than eating bread every day. Thinking about this, he could not help but think of Xianglin's classic quote. Chapter 210. Steamed buns, fermented flour, kneaded with water, and then steamed in a pot. After breakfast, List took a piece of thick bast paper and began to sort out his impression of pasta cooking method. Most pasta dishes were very simple. Even if he didn't eat much, he knew the basic method. The most important thing in dough is fermentation. Fortunately, bread also needs to be fermented, so the rest is a matter of creativity. But think about it carefully. It was not just a matter of creativity. Although there was magic and chi here, food preservation was a serious constraint. Bread had a long shelf life, especially the black bread eaten by civilians, which could be eaten for half a year. But steamed buns, if not eaten for 2 days, would probably grow hair. Even if civilians came up with this delicacy, they were reluctant to make it. Not finishing it was a serious waste. When a knight goes out to fight, bread should be the main food. It is easy to carry and not easy to spoil. At least bring some biscuits and baked pies. You can't go to the battlefield with dumplings and youtiao. He concluded and felt that it was a bit presumptuous. Pancakes, noodles, cornbread, they have a long shelf life. Just a little water, they can be eaten anywhere. So, in the final analysis, it was poverty that limited the imagination of the locals. He continued to study the recipes and wrote down the pasta cooking methods in his limited memory. Steamed buns, fermented flour, wrapped in vegetables and then steamed in a pot. Dumplings, fermented flour, kneaded dough into strips, cut into small pieces, rolled into dumpling wrappers with a rolling pin, wrapped in vegetables, and then steamed in a pot. Noodles, fermented flour, dough constantly pulled into long strips. Before he finished writing this entry, he suddenly felt that this method seemed to be the same as ramen. There should be a difference between ramen and noodles. Alas, I can't think of the difference. Forget it, I'll combine it into one entry. After writing these recipes, Liszt thought about it. It was a bit high profile to launch too many at once. He picked out the simplest steamed buns and prepared to give advice to Mrs. Abbey and the baker Rayner and let them invent it. With steamed buns, the subsequent buns were easy to make. Of course. After all, pasta was not Liszt's favorite food. He was just going to make it and improve the taste. Therefore, he wasn't really passionate about it. His favorite dishes were still the authentic Sichuan cuisine and Huaiyang cuisine. Unfortunately, these dishes had high requirements for knife skills, ingredients, and condiment. Liszt could not do anything about it. It was not easy to instruct Mrs. Abbey to make scrambled eggs and egg soup. Immediately, he ordered someone to call Rayner and Mrs. Abbey and told them about a kind of pasta he got from other places. He also described the general appearance of the steamed buns. Mrs. Abbey, Rayner, study the steamed buns when you have time. Master, just leave it to me. The method of making steamed buns sounds very simple. I'll be able to steam steamed buns very soon. Since inventing several new types of bread, scrambled eggs, and egg soup, Mrs. Abbey already had the imposing manner of a star chef and was full of self-confidence. Rayner also nodded. I will do my best to assist Mrs. Abbey. He had heard others say that Mrs. Abbey had invented egg soup and scrambled eggs. All the chefs in Coral City had learned cooking from Mrs. Abbey. Therefore, he admired her very much and was willing to cooperate with Mrs. Abbey in food research. Mantoux instructed, read a book and write something. The short time of the morning was about to pass. Just when Liszt thought that today would be another leisurely day, a knight galloped from Coral City. Lord Baron, the tulip caravan has returned. Sir Frank asked you to send someone to Coral City to hand over the business. He did not directly say that the serfs had arrived, but Liszt naturally understood. I will send someone immediately. You go and rest first. Thank you, Lord Baron. A moment later, Gord arrived and was instructed by Liszt to immediately arrange how to hand over the serf. This time was different from the last time. The temperature had just dropped and it was snowing. If one was not careful, the serfs would freeze to death. Fortunately, preparations were made. The carriages of the caravan were requisitioned, and a bunch of cold-resistant materials were ready to go to Coral City. Liszt had planned to go in person, but he remembered the mineral deposits of Black Horse Island. Calculating the time, Marcus would return with the ship this afternoon and was likely to bring news of the fire attribute condensed core mineral veins. He handed the 300 gold coins he had saved these days to Gort. Consultant Gort, I bought this batch of serfs for 210 gold coins. There are 1,000 of them. The number of losses does not exceed 150 is acceptable, but more than that, you need to compensate me. I will explain it to Frank in detail. These 300 gold coins are the cost of buying a new batch of serfs. Try to keep the price of serfs as low as possible. The war will definitely bring countless serfs. I believe there is room for further compression of the price. How to talk is up to you. Please rest assured, I am familiar with Frank. Even if I can't touch his bottom line, I won't let him take much advantage of me. By the way, can I take advantage of him in some things? Gort was a little hesitant and embarrassed to say it. List said, say what you want to say. Your charm is unmatched on Coral Island, and you are the ideal marriage partner for many aristocratic ladies. I can see that Frank's family is eager to get your attention. Maybe I can use this to reduce the price to the bottom line and buy more serfs. Aristocrats are graceful, but it is normal to use all the resources around them for their own benefit. That's why Gort came up with such a handsome man trick. But List couldn't get past his own psychological barrier and directly denied it. Frank is a sensible aristocrat. I believe he has his own code of conduct, so don't involve little Sally. Try to fight for the difference of a few gold coins or a dozen gold coins. He did lack liquidity, but he had a lot of fixed assets, so there was no need to be unscrupulous. Especially when it came to feelings, he wanted to retain a sense of innocence. Alas, I was still alone at the age of 30 in my previous life, and I was troubled. In this life, when I turned 16, there was a line of girls chasing me, which also annoyed me. Sure enough, as List guessed. In the afternoon, when the snow stopped, the flowers returned from the sea. In addition to bringing half a ship of fire dragon bone fragments, Marcus also brought information about the fire-attributed core mineral vein. My lord, this is a stone I dug out from a crack in a rock pillar when I was excavating the bone fragments. It is very strange, and I can vaguely feel the existence of magic power on it. He handed over an irregular reddish-brown stone. The surface of the stone was smooth, and the regular lines of concentric circles could be seen on the fracture surface, just like the shell surface of a clamshell. The overall texture was like glass, and the edges were even transparent, but it was far less transparent than gems and crystals. It felt lighter than ordinary stones, and upon closer inspection, one could see that there were a lot of bubbles inside. Chapter 211. Volcanic glass is a natural glass formed in volcanic eruptions. List didn't know much about why glass was formed. Otherwise, he would have studied glass a long time ago. As for whether the reddish-brown stone in his hand was volcanic glass or not, it was just his speculation. He was not an expert, so it was hard to judge. The smoke mission said that this thing is a fire attribute core. Marcus said that he felt signs of magic. I have to check carefully to see if it really has fire attribute magic. He immediately cast the magic eyes. His pupils rotated like a whirlpool, and his deep eyes swept over the reddish-brown stone. Suddenly, the reddish-brown stone changed, turning into a little red light in his field of vision. The light seemed very faint, but it exuded a gorgeous texture, which was completely different from the general fire attribute magic. An idea suddenly came to List's mind. This magic, it shouldn't be the residual magic of the fire dragon, right? Now that it has been inferred that Black Horse Island was created by the fallen fire dragon, it is not surprising that the magic in this magical stone belongs to the fire dragon. He even thought of a possibility that the volcano formed by the fire dragon should be an active volcano that often erupts. After all, the magic of the dragon is long-lasting. But if there is a rock wrapped in magic, the volcano will definitely die without the influence of magic. This kind of stone is called a fire attribute core, and the bubbles inside are wrapped in magic. It is very likely that the magic of the fire dragon was wrapped in it, making it impossible to drive the volcano to erupt. The magic of the fire dragon. Liszt felt that he was going to make a fortune. Anything related to the dragon was of great value. The fire dragon is an elemental dragon. Although it is not a metal dragon, a gem dragon, nor a sacred dragon, it also has the magical power to infect the surroundings. Therefore, the magic left by it is of extraordinary value. Liszt suppressed his excitement. He calmly asked, "Teacher Marcus, is there a lot of this or on Black Horse Island?" "I don't know exactly how many there are on the island, but in the bone yard, there are a lot of these stones scattered in the cracks of the rock pillars." Mine all of it. Your feeling is correct. I can also see the magic power contained in it. Since Marcus didn't know that this was a product of Fire Dragon, Liszt chose to keep it a secret. "I believe that this will be a good material for forging equipment or something else." However, he still underestimated Marcus's intelligence and imagination. "A magic stone, my lord. Don't you think it looks like a gemstone produced by a dragon?" He raised his eyebrows, then relaxed again. Liszt pretended to be surprised. "Why would you think of a dragon gem? This kind of stone doesn't look like a gem at all." "Sir, it might not be a gem from a gem dragon or a metal from a metal dragon, but a stone left behind by an elemental dragon. Other than a dragon or a super dragon in World of Warcraft, I couldn't think of any animal that could be left behind. Coupled with these magical stones, it must be the remains of a dragon." At this point, Marcus became more and more certain that his inference was correct. Maybe many years ago, a dragon slayer killed a dragon, and it happened on Black Horse Island. This series of inferences. Liszt's mood was very complicated. It should have been a lucky thing to have smart subordinates, but the sense of superiority in IQ was greatly reduced. Now that Marcus had guessed the answer, he thought a little and decided to no longer keep it a secret. "Do you really think that this is an elemental dragon?" "Yes, my lord." Marcus's eyes lit up, and his inspiration overflowed. "And I also thought of something else. The black-blooded horses on the island are extraordinary. They all thought that it was a World of Warcraft species, but why can't it be a dragon? They live on Black Horse Island, and have been in contact with the remains of an elemental dragon for a long time. Perhaps they have been infected into a dragon stallion." Once the hole in his brain opened, he couldn't stop for a moment. Even the secret of the dragon stallion was guessed by him. Taking a deep breath, Liszt said in a heavy tone, "Teacher Marcus, you should know what it means for us if this is true." Marcus thought seriously for a full 2 minutes and said aloud, "My lord, this means that you are the son of glory that Gort thinks you are. The glory of the night will always look after you. As your follower, I am deeply honored and hope to follow in your footsteps and make a career." His tone was full of excitement. After that, he knelt on one knee and performed a solemn knight's oath of allegiance. Seeing such a reaction, Liszt suddenly felt that he was sometimes too cautious. The knight system in this world was deeply rooted. The degree of brainwashing of the glory of the knight was no less than that of the Lord. The authority of the Lord was almost unshakable, especially for someone like Marcus, who was passionate about nobility. Maintaining the authority of the Lord was to maintain his ideals and ideas. In the future, he would also be a noble lord. So many secrets could actually be shared with his subordinate. However, with the idea that there was no harm in being cautious, Liszt still hoped to keep many secrets in his stomach, such as the space gem, the smoke mission, and how much money he had. The corners of his mouth curled up and he said lightly, "May the glory of the night watch over you and me." The performance was over and back to business. Liszt said in a deep voice, "I feel that the stone contains fire magic. Perhaps this is the product of a fire dragon." However, looking at the degree of decay of the bones, I am afraid that the fire dragon has been dead for more than thousands of years. It is hard to say how much benefit it can survive. Indeed, but it is a huge gain to determine that the black blood horse is a dragon horse. We don't pay enough attention to the black blood horse. The black blood horse really needs to be paid more attention. The domestication work will be handed over to Teacher Marcus. I am willing to serve my lord. There is also this kind of stone, let's call it volcanic glass. Its mining work should also be followed up. Liszt felt that the fire attribute nucleus was a bit awkward and irresponsibly named it. I will study its role as soon as possible so that I can measure its value. Marcus nodded and suddenly asked, Sir, would it be too wasteful to use those dragon bone fragments directly to make a bone tool for plowing? I also feel that it is wasteful, but I have asked the magician to study it. It has decayed for too long, there is no magic at all, and the magic has long dissipated, leaving only the advantage of hardness. Those 5 dragon bones should still have some magic. Well, focus on protecting them and leave them to be slowly studied in the future. As you wish. After the discussion about the fire dragon and volcanic glass, Liszt remembered a previous idea. Teacher Marcus, I have fought against Randy and Russell. Their strength is slightly inferior and has not been able to prove my strength. In Flower Town, only you can prove my strength. Marcus was surprised. Sir, have you honed your chi secret book? Chapter 212. Bang! Bang! The knight's spear made of fine steel bent and deformed with the impact of the 2 elite Earth Knight. Every time it collided, sparks were produced and a harsh sonic boom was heard, as if it would break at any time. Even if it did not break, the 2 spears were on the verge of being scrapped and needed to be melted down and recast. Liszt was surrounded by fire attribute chi, like a god of war in flames. Marcus was surrounded by wind attribute chi, like a drifting cloud. Russell and Randy, watching from a distance, saw the collision of flames and clouds. The clouds were defensive, the flames were offensive, and the sky was full of fiery clouds. Marcus is an elite Earth Knight, and Lord Baron is not at a disadvantage. Every time he charges, he can suppress Marcus. I can't believe it. Randy was stunned. Russell smiled bitterly. I know that Lord Baron is very strong. I can't take a shot from him during the charge, but I didn't expect him to be this strong. Even Marcus is not his opponent. Perhaps this is talent. Randy sighed. The Count founded the Coral Island. He is a talented knight. His bloodline, Sir Levis, Baron Olvera, and Lytton, have shown excellent talent since childhood. Originally, the worst was Lord Baron, but I didn't expect Lord Baron to be so well prepared. Perhaps it also includes hard work. Every morning, I can see Lord Baron practicing chi on the horsefield. At this point, the 2 looked at each other and were silent. People who are more talented than you work harder than you. What else is there to say? At this time, the 2 people in the distance launched their 6th charge. The flames were still fierce, but the clouds were gradually thinning. The moment the knight's spear hit, the violent burst of flames broke the thin clouds in one fell swoop. 1 black and 1 yellow horse staggered. Marcus's figure flew from the horse's back and fell heavily to the ground. His knight's spear was also broken in 2. Roar! Black Dragon raised its front hooves and neighed loudly. Liszt held the curved knight's spear with one hand. His chest was heaving up and down. After 6 consecutive charges, even the elite Earth Knight felt extremely tired. However, he was extremely excited. Panting, he said, Mr. Marcus, I won. Marcus crawled up from the ground. There was a moment of confusion in his eyes before he calmed down and panted heavily. My lord's strength has exceeded my imagination. Even though I don't have enough experience in charging, all that's left is time. May victory be with you from now on. I took advantage of the horses, Liszt said humbly. Even without Black Dragon, I wouldn't be able to persist for long. My total amount of qi is already far behind yours. At this point, he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his mouth and swallowed it back. He probably wanted to ask if Liszt had become an elite Earth Knight. Marcus didn't ask, and Liszt didn't intend to say. He dismounted and motioned to the retainer knight to take away the damaged knight's spear. He said to Marcus, I have proven my strength in charging on the battlefield, but I hope to fight with Mr. Marcus again tomorrow with a sword. Charging was more about qi, while sword fighting relied more on fighting skills. Marcus nodded. It's better to change it to the evening. I can recover my qi in the evening. I need to go to sea early tomorrow morning. Good. During the conversation, Randy and Russell had come over and congratulated Liszt. After this battle, Liszt had understood the gap between the Earth Knight and the elite Earth Knight. Referring to Marcus's strength, he had a clear understanding of the strength of the two. I have learned a lot from the battle with Mr. Marcus. You can often ask Marcus for advice in the future. Yes, Lord Baron. Let's go have a cup of milk tea. Liszt took the lead and walked under the apple tree. The servant quickly brought 4 cups of milk tea, which was brewed with fresh milk. Nowadays, cows produce milk vigorously and can produce several barrels a day. Every day, in addition to supplying the needs of the banquet and Liszt's personal drink, the children who train hard in the night class will also be rewarded with a cup of fresh milk. In this way, there is still a lot of milk left every day. The serfs on the dairy farm will mix flour and milk to make dry milk powder. The original dry milk powder was all expropriated by Tulip Castle. Now the dry milk powder naturally entered Liszt's castle and was stored. Whether it is eaten in the off-season or sold, it is a source of income. In the afternoon, the sun came out for a short while, then shrank back, and then began to snow. This situation will continue throughout the winter. With the nutritional supply of milk tea, Marcus's qi recovery speed is faster than expected, so the actual sword fight will be held ahead of schedule. Liszt did not use the red blood sword. With the red blood sword, it is estimated that he can directly crush Marcus. He chose a steel long sword, a two-handed sword, and Marcus is also equipped with the same equipment, but Liszt still wore the World of Warcraft leather armor, and Marcus can only wear ordinary leather armor. Lords and followers certainly can't enjoy the same treatment. No nonsense. There is no need for Randy and Russell to watch. The two are in the depths of the horse field, facing the flying snow, both holding swords against each other. Liszt, who is inspired to become a flame sword saint, no longer has stage fright in this kind of actual training. His qi is freely gushing, and every move seems to be trying his best. Longfei. The steel long sword in his hand stabbed upward, and a flame shot out like a flying fire dragon. Wind whirlpool. Marcus turned the steel long sword, and his qi wrapped around it. With the stirring of the long sword, it formed a whirlpool, directly swallowing Liszt's flame qi. Clang. The steel long sword, which had lost the attachment of the fire qi, was hit by Marcus's long sword. The wind qi was still wrapped around it, and it was released in an instant, almost knocking Liszt's long sword away. He grasped it hard and was able to hold it. Hoo! That was close. Liszt's palms were sweaty. The feeling of a sword fight is completely different from a charge. Marcus in front of him is like a hedgehog, with a tight defense and no place to attack. Marcus stabs him in the back, which makes him very uncomfortable. The two have been fighting like this for more than 20 times. No one can do anything to the other. Marcus is experienced, mainly in defense, supplemented by sneak attacks. Every attack is at the moment when Liszt's old and new qi are connected, which makes him unspeakably uncomfortable. However, Liszt has a strong capital, a large amount of qi, and a fast recovery speed, barely able to support it. One is fierce, the other is experienced. The number of exchanges went up to more than 30 times. Following which, the two's qi can no longer keep up with the consumption. After another 10 exchanges, it is a draw. Both of them leaned on their steel-long swords, panting heavily in the heavy snow. "Teacher Marcus, you are going easy on me?" Liszt suddenly asked. With his almost zero sword fighting experience, it is a little exaggerated for him to be able to fight to a draw with Marcus. Before the sword fight, he was arrogant, thinking that he can get rid of Marcus in 10 minutes. At the beginning of the fight, Marcus's sneak attacks made his heart jump. He was afraid that if he is not careful, he will be killed by Marcus. After a long time, he realized that he can't do anything to Marcus. However, Marcus's counterattacks are no longer sharp, as if he doesn't have the energy to kill him. They are in a stalemate. He felt that Marcus went easy on him in the later stages of the fight. However, Marcus shook his head. His continuous panting caused him to speak intermittently. "In the first 10 exchanges, Lord's attacks are too fierce, and you don't give me any leeway. I do have the chance to defeat Lord. However, Lord's improvement is astonishing. Towards the end, I can't find an opportunity to sneak attack." Chapter 213. Charging and sword fighting with Marcus benefited Liszt a lot. Building a car behind closed doors can certainly improve oneself, but it is also necessary to go out. Without actual combat testing, it is difficult to judge whether the skills you are honing are good or bad. And this kind of actual combat also gave Liszt a clearer understanding of his own strength. Knowing oneself and knowing the enemy can win 100 battles. He believed that if he fought with Marcus again, whether it was a charge or a sword fight, he would be able to completely crush his opponent. The elite Earth Knight who takes potions and his strength completely crushes the elite Earth Knight who takes fighting skills. With money, you can really do whatever you want. So, the past few days of continuous combat have brought him the greatest summary of experience, not how to fight technically, but how to make money and take potions. Soon, a batch of fast-growing magic thorns will be harvested, and Elk Sun will make them into magic potions to assist the flame mushroom magic potion, which will speed up my path of taking potions. His eyes were shining, and he had already understood the essence of night training. There is also World of Warcraft meat. Even if I borrow money, I will eat a few pounds every day. Dang dang dang. There was a knock on the door, and Carter's voice came from outside the door. "Master." Putting away his thoughts, Liszt put the thick bast paper with the words, "Take potions, eat meat, drink milk," into a magic book he had recently read and responded, "Please come in. The caravan's carriage has returned, carrying the children of the serfs. Mr. Isaiah asked you for instructions on how to arrange these serfs. Let him arrange them according to the original plan." "Yes, master." Carter took out a letter from his arms and handed it to Liszt. "There is also a letter brought back by the caravan, written to you by Consultant Gort." Gort did not return with the caravan. There were still a large number of serfs staying outside, and he needed to arrange a place for them to live at night. So he asked the caravan to send a letter, introducing the handover of the serfs. He flipped through the letters, which recorded the number of serfs. The original order was for 1,000 serfs, including 200 craftsmen. However, only 836 serfs and only 144 craftsmen made it to Flower Town alive. The number of casualties was too high, exceeding the target Liszt had given. Frank promised to supply us with 100 serfs and 20 craftsmen on the basis of the next serf sale. The letter recorded the result of the bargain between Gort and Frank. Following that was a transaction of 300 gold coins. Frank did not agree because he had received a letter from Levis. It was mentioned that the war would stop with the arrival of winter, and the Count was already packing up the plundered resources and preparing to withdraw from the country. Frank wanted to wait for Levis to return before deciding whether to continue selling serf. "The Count is coming back?" After reading the letter, Liszt could not help but calculate the time. It was now December, and the Count had set off in September. He had been out on a campaign for nearly 3 months. Compared to previous years where he even spent the New Year's Day outside, this year's development order obviously did not last very long. I just don't know if this year's harvest will be abundant. The Eagle Kingdom is a big iron producer. If I can plunder more iron, or I can buy a batch and keep it for forging weapons and equipment, try to arm a night squad as soon as possible. Next year, if there is a chance, I will follow the Count to the battlefield to pick up some beans. List ate the dinner alone. The town officials were busy accepting this group of child serfs. Children without relatives were directly lodged with the serfs in Flower Town. Children with relatives were temporarily thrown into new houses in the residential area, waiting for their parents to arrive, and then living arrangements would be made. Food was distributed to the serfs' homes early in the morning, and then the serfs prepared it and sent it to the children. Extra clothes and bedding were borrowed from the serfs' homes to keep the children warm. After the castle bought new clothes, they would be returned to each serf. There were also many children with cold or acclimatized to the climate, and they needed to be taken care of by the old and steady serfs to prevent them from dying. This night was windy and snowy, but Flower Town was destined to be lively. Tomorrow was also a busy day. It would take time for more than 800 serfs to integrate into Flower Town's life. One of the biggest obstacles was the language problem. Snake was spoken here, while the new serfs mostly spoke Wind language. Fortunately, the previous batch of new serfs had learned basic Snake language and could communicate on their behalf. After dinner, List went to the town for a tour. Seeing the sallow and emaciated children shivering in the cold wind and being commanded by the middle-aged officials to salute him, List's heart was not very comfortable. This was a direct collision of two worldviews. He sighed in his heart. After showing his face, he went straight back to the castle, not in the mood to stay any longer. After returning to the castle, he went straight upstairs, just in time to see the maid Little Lily bending over to clean in the corridor. The improved version of the black and white maid uniform was stretched, revealing a pair of straight white pantyhose long legs. Under the skirt there was a round curve, very respectable. Hearing footsteps, Little Lily quickly turned around and stood in the corner, letting List pass by. "Master." "Go on." List regretfully withdrew his eyes and entered his study, calmed his emotions for 3 minutes, and grabbed a volcanic glass on the table. He studied it for a while before taking a break at noon. No matter how he ran his chi, it could not penetrate the volcanic glass and come into contact with the magic in the bubble. The fire dragon magic was imprisoned in the bubble, as if it was completely solidified and could not be leaked. But after exploring it, he still found something. The fire magic around the volcanic glass was obviously a lot more restless, as if it was being pulled by the fire dragon magic in the bubble. It was a bit like a magnetic field. It was obviously separated by the volcanic glass and could not be touched, but it could cause the fire magic to become restless. Therefore, Marcus could feel its magic. With this characteristic alone, I feel it is suitable to make magic equipment. He silently pondered. If a lot of volcanic glass is arranged together, can it form a magic formation? Then it will cause the fire magic in the magic formation to riot and create an environment full of fire magic? If I put a mage in it, will he be able to create a fireball? This seemed to make no sense. So he wanted to break the volcanic glass and release the fire dragon magic in it. However, after the release, it was difficult to guarantee what the consequences of this magic belonging to the fire dragon would be. Will it infect the surrounding environment, such as causing a fire? He was not sure, but it was obviously not suitable to release it in the study. There were still many decorative books on the bookshelf, and it would be a pity to burn them. It was best to do it during the day. He put on his armor, found an open area, and released the fire dragon magic. But after thinking about it, he felt that it was too much of a fuss. Just a few bubbles in a piece of volcanic glass, How much magic could be stored, and how much reaction would it cause? After a moment of struggle, he still did not break the volcanic glass. Chapter 2:14. At dawn the next day, after the Chi practice class was completed, Liszt continued to study volcanic glass. He first took a piece of volcanic glass to the wasteland near the castle and smashed the volcanic glass. The bubble burst along with the volcanic glass, and under the observation of the magic eye, the fire dragon's magic escaped directly. The next moment Liszt was startled. These dissipating fire dragon magic entangled together, and under his gaze, condensed into the shape of a tiny dragon. The wings expanded, flapped up and down, and the figure was ethereal, as if it could be blown away by the wind at any time, turning back and forth in the air, really like a red dragon flying. Liszt never thought that the dragon's magic could have such a mysterious change. He quickly remembered that when Glanigen understood the triangle theory, he said that he believed that dragons and elves were derived from the combination of magic and matter. Now that he thought about it, it was really possible. It was likely that the dragons simply originated from magic. The fire attribute magic produced essence, and then the essence condensed into a fire dragon. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain why the fire dragon's magic, after so many years of evolution, could still form a small magic fire dragon. After looking at the magic fire dragon still floating in the air, and the snowflakes could not extinguish its light, Liszt directly grabbed the magic fire dragon with his hand wearing the World of Warcraft leather cover. He just touched it. Bang! With a burst, the small fire dragon exploded in place, turned into a flame, and blew up his gloves on the spot. His palm hurt, and his skin was burned by the splashed flames, almost burning the epidermis. Even if it was not burnt, it made his palm have 2 more blisters, burning with pain. It's quite powerful. Liszt squeezed the blisters with his hand, gritted his teeth, and ran his chi to soothe the pain of the wound. The knight's chi has the effect of warming the body and healing wounds. The magic eye was not withdrawn. He was still observing. The magic power of the exploding fire dragon quickly condensed again, condensing into a new magical little fire dragon. Looking at the size, it was almost the same as before. This unscientific situation caught Liszt off guard. He felt that this magical fire dragon was like the wind in the roaring wind valley. It would linger for a long time, and would always linger in the wasteland near the castle. In case a serf passed by and accidentally touched the small fire dragon, it might immediately cause an explosion. The danger was not great, but it was still possible to scorch his skin or get blisters all over his body. Wait for something to absorb the magic of the fire dragon. He glanced at the broken volcanic glass on the ground, which was probably burned into liquid magma during the volcanic eruption, so that the fire dragon magic could be wrapped in it. Now that it had already condensed into solid glass, it was impossible to wrap it up even if he wanted to. Suddenly, he thought of something. Why don't I ask the crystal craftsman to carve the volcanic glass into bottles or jars? Then use it to capture the fire dragon magic and store it? This volcanic glass obviously has the effect of blocking the magic of the fire dragon and is a natural storage container. With this thought, his worries were dispelled. He continued to study the flying magic fire dragon. The flight path of the small fire dragon was not fixed, but there seemed to be some restrictions that bound it to a fixed range. This range was the first small fire dragon that was crushed by Liszt, and the explosion of the fire dragon magic spread. Dispelling the magic eyes, the small fire dragon immediately disappeared from his field of vision. Casting the magic eyes, the small fire dragon appeared naturally, slowly flapping its wings to fly, turning and turning back within a fixed range, acting very leisurely. Liszt touched it with his steel sword. The sword directly crossed the small fire dragon, or it could be said that the small fire dragon directly passed through the sword. There was no collision or reaction between the two. Why is there no reaction? After a little thought, he thought of a possibility. He immediately ran his chi, attached it to the steel sword, and touched the small fire dragon again. Bang! It exploded in an instant. Sparks flew in all directions, which could be seen without the magic eyes. After a while, everything calmed down. In the vision of the magic eyes, another small fire dragon appeared. This time, the small fire dragon's range of movement was limited by the new explosion range, flying in a circular space within 50 centimeters. Its size and total amount of magic were still the same. There was no loss. It really doesn't make sense. Why is it that there's no loss of energy even though we're clearly doing it? This is similar to the nature of the dragon's gem. The gems produced by the dragon are also almost infinite, but no matter how infinite it is, there will eventually be a day when it is exhausted. This small fire dragon may explode thousands of times before it is completely annihilated. By the way, will it fly underground? Liszt immediately waited for the small fire dragon to be closest to the ground and stretched out his steel sword to touch it. Bang! It exploded. This time, the center of the explosion was only 10 centimeters from the ground. When the new small fire dragon condensed, it would fly to the ground. The moment it entered the ground, the remaining snow on the ground was instantly melted by the small fire dragon, and then the wet ground evaporated at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, the small fire dragon flew out of the ground again, flew for a moment, and then entered the ground again. Since it is only the size of a palm, it can only dry a small area at a time, but after a few times the dry area will have new changes. The dry soil gradually turned black and was scorched. He diverted the small fire dragon's detonation, dug up the scorched earth on the ground, knocked it, and found that it was as hard as a brick. Brick! At this moment, a light fell from the sky and fell into his mind. The magic fire dragon is equivalent to burning bricks. I can use it to burn bricks, pottery, and porcelain. Once the magic of the fire dragon is enough, it will be countless times more powerful than a high-temperature furnace. There is no smoke pollution, and there is no need for physical fuel. The idea of a moment made him overjoyed. There must be a lot of volcanic glass distributed on Black Horse Island. By condensing the magic of these fire dragons together, and building a brick kiln with volcanic glass, bricks can be continuously fired. Pottery and porcelain were almost ready to be fired. It is said that firing bricks and ceramics requires different temperatures. It is completely possible to separate the magic of the fire dragon to achieve temperature control. The magic of a whole fire dragon can ignite a volcano, and part of the fire dragon magic can be used to burn bricks. His thoughts diverged, and more ideas emerged. Not only can I bake bricks, but I can also use the small fire dragon to make a stove that burns steam, and then invent a steam engine. It seems that the steam engine is a little difficult, but isn't it just a matter of minutes to boil water and a hot brick bed? This is not rewarding me with a mineral vein, this is rewarding me with a bunch of energy. Looking at the nearly 40 smoke missions that have appeared, the value of volcanic glass is second only to space gems. If properly used and developed, it can even surpass space gems. He forcibly suppressed his excitement, stared at the flying fire dragon, and clenched his fists. Chapter 215. Liszt doesn't know how dragons infect beasts and World of Warcraft, but the conditions for infection are definitely very limited, otherwise the Grand Duke and King with dragons would have dragon creatures all over the country. The fact is that the Sapphire Grand Duke only has one kind of dragon horse, that is, the blue blood horse, which is so precious that even the blood is not willing to leak out. So, from this point of view, the acquisition of dragon blood should be quite difficult. It's just that he had a previous inference that the cows on the dairy farm were likely to have acquired dragon blood, and mutated into dragon cows. This made him feel that dragon blood was not very difficult to obtain. The invisible dragon strolled around the dairy farm and was infected with dragon blood. So is this difficult or not? Can the magic of the fire dragon infect the blood of the dragon? If so, what animal should I infect with dragon blood? There are already dragon horses and black blood horses, and there are probably dragon cows in cows. Other chickens, ducks, geese, pigs, sheep, and monkeys do not seem to have much value in infection. Maybe I can infect Dosen and infect Dosen into an intermediate dragon in World of Warcraft? He thought the idea was good. Dosen was worth cultivating. Of course, it's just an idea. The research on the fire dragon magic is still in its preliminary stage. Before the research is thorough, it is best to temporarily use it as firewood in the kiln. Otherwise, with the explosive effect of the fire dragon magic, Dosen will be roasted instead of infected into a dragon beast. After determining the location of the small fire dragon, List picked up the fragments of volcanic glass and returned to the castle. The volcanic glass that Marcus brought back was not much, but it was not little either, and it was all piled up in his gem space. If the volcanic glass is smashed, it can probably condense a small magic dragon the size of a washbasin. Somehow, List always likes to use the size of a washbasin as an adjective. What he thought was to first have the volcanic glass carved, spliced, and made into a jar. It is convenient to extract and store the fire dragon magic at any time. This magical dragon magic is very valuable, and a little waste is a huge loss. I have to find the crystal craftsman Brad to work for me. I should find an opportunity to abduct him to the flower town and have him work for me. It was a pity that craftsmen like Brad did not have to worry about food and drink with their skills. They could live a good life and were unwilling to settle down in a small rural town. It had been snowing all morning. List, wearing a cloak, went back and forth between the castle and the wasteland where Charmander was, trying to do various research. However, he was not a magician, and his research methods were still too few. No matter how hard he tried, he did not find much useful information. The only thing worth affirming is that volcanic glass can indeed block the magic of the fire dragon. He found that when the small fire dragon hit the volcanic glass, it would immediately fall apart, but it would not cause an explosion. The cause of the explosion was a physical reaction caused by the fire dragon's magic coming into contact with other magic of different attribute. Without the stimulation of magic power, the little fire dragon could maintain its fire dragon form and burn its surroundings, as if it was a continuous source of heat, inexhaustible. Within 50 centimeters of Charmander's movement, the ice and snow melted and the ground dried up, having been burned to scorched earth and chaff. A mysterious fire dragon, I don't know how many years it has been dead, but its magic still has such extraordinary power. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, who would believe it? He sighed and thought of a kind of Earth technology. Doesn't this look like controllable nuclear fusion? Controllable nuclear fusion is commonly known as an artificial sun. Whoever masters controllable nuclear fusion will master endless energy. He even believes that all dragons are equivalent to artificial suns with a lifespan of 1,000 years. Continuous production of energy. The snow on the ground was roasted by the small fire dragon, constantly melting and vaporizing, forming a strange landscape in the heavy snow. List's thoughts returned from the artificial sun, and he could not help but think, if I dig a pool, can I make a hot spring? Winter and hot springs are a perfect match. He couldn't resist the impulse and immediately decided, I want to make a hot spring in the castle in the bathroom. The bathroom has a large bathtub, separated into a small area, and put in the small fire dragon, which is equivalent to constantly adding hot water. There is no need for servants to bring hot water from downstairs. He quickly returned to the castle and designed the construction plan for the indoor hot spring. He was ready to implement the hot spring within a week. By the time he drew the first draft of the hot spring bathtub, Gort had already taken the serfs back to Flower Town. Unfortunately, 7 serfs died due to illness and cold on the way. Including the previous children, only 829 people came to Flower Town, of which 142 were craftsmen. It was a pity that people froze to death, but considering the weather, Liszt could only sigh. In any case, with the addition of more than 800 serfs, the total population of Flower Town finally broke through the 3,000 mark. In terms of population alone, it is no longer a barren town, but a medium-sized town. To reach the level of the wealthy town of Falcon Town with a population of more than 4,000, it is necessary to continue the slave trade. This damned weather, it's going to freeze me into ice cream. After the greeting, Gort immediately complained, if it wasn't for the sudden drop in temperature, the dead serfs would have had the chance to come to Flower Town alive and see the glory of the night. Don't complain, work hard for a few more days, and try to properly settle these serfs. There will be gin at the dinner. Of course, this is my job. His complaints were more to ask for credit from Liszt. After Liszt promised to drink gin at the dinner, he immediately became spirited. He shouted at the town's officials and clerks, making the already messy scene even more messy. Then he switched to the field, showing his management ability, redistributing tasks to each official, specifying the work of clerks and patrols, and ensuring that no one can be lazy. It has to be said that as an aristocrat, he has some experience in how to command his subordinates. The castle's servants also participated in the arrangement of the new serfs. The main thing was that the kitchen would make a lot of simple food for the serfs to fill their stomach. Mrs. Morrison and the maids, in their spare time, would sew clothes and give them to the serfs to avoid the cold. At this time, Jessie led the team and several servingmen assistants, carrying a few buckets of flour, beans, and minced meat mixed with food, walked along Dawson Avenue in the direction of the town. When passing by Dawson's kennel, Jessie said hello cheerfully, "Good afternoon, Dawson." Dawson has always been dismissive of these servants, it is only loyal to Liszt. But after Jessie said hello, Dawson suddenly poked its head out of the kennel, sniffed with its dog nose, looked around, and seemed to have found something. However, it only saw a few familiar humans. They are just humble servants responsible for shoveling its poop. So, shaking its head, it shrank back into the kennel. The weather is cold, and the kennel with a quilt is still warm. Chapter 216. The footprints continued to the castle gate and then disappeared. No one noticed this, including the retainer knight patrolling around the castle in the heavy snow. In the castle kitchen, Mrs. Abby's voice was so loud that it could even be heard in the hall. The butler, Carter, was wiping the lamps and decorations on the walls. When he heard the voice, he unconsciously shrugged his shoulders. "She is always so rude. Why can you tolerate her?" Thomas said sarcastically as he tidied up the stools in the hall. Carter did not like Thomas, not only because Thomas despised his authority as a butler, but also because Thomas always liked to speak ill of others. He replied seriously, "Because she is Mrs. Abby, because the master loves to eat the delicious food she makes, and the servants also like it. I think so too. If not for her cooking skills, she would have been fired by the master." That's not necessarily true. The master is a noble aristocrat with benevolent qualities. He will provide Mrs. Abby with a new position. The master is too kind to the servants. In my opinion, Jessie, Tom, and Irene should be driven away. They are just waste. It is best not to let the master hear this. Everyone is doing their own thing. They did not make any mistakes and should not be called waste. Thomas sneered. Anyone can do better than them. Just as he said that, Mrs. Abby's soprano voice suddenly came from the kitchen. "Damn, Irene, where are the vegetables I told you to wash? If you delay the master's dinner, I will kiss your ass with my boots." Then came Irene's loud refutation. I was washing the beans, you ordered me to do so. Oh, is that so? Can't you be a bit faster and wash the beans and vegetables? Do you know how many beans there are? Maggie, tell Mrs. Abby that I think her eyes are already old. Heavens, are you rebelling, Irene? The quarrel in the kitchen provided Thomas with material. He snorted disdainfully. This is what you said, everyone is doing their own thing. The fact is, wastes are wastes. Carter ignored him and said, Have you set up the tables and chairs upstairs? Tonight's banquet will be brought forward, so don't delay it. Aren't Tom and Jessie going to set up the tables and chairs? They're responsible for delivering food to town, so I'll leave this task to you. Thomas sneered, but still went upstairs. He was just a valet and needed to listen to the butler's orders. However, the quarrel in the kitchen did not stop. Mrs. Abby was still in the hairdryer state, constantly roaring, while Irene was still angrily refuting Mrs. Abby. But the work in the kitchen was orderly, and it did not fall into a state of stagnation because of the quarrel. Even the little maid interns were doing their jobs as if nothing had happened. Everyone was used to the strange relationship between Mrs. Abby and Irene, sometimes like enemies, sometimes like mother and daughter. Maggie was used to it. She took the broom and was responsible for sweeping up the rotten leaves on the ground, which could be given to the serfs to feed the chickens. Maggie, do you want to eat? As soon as the quarrel stopped, Irene, who was responsible for washing the vegetables, suddenly pulled out a handful of shriveled peanuts from the corner and extended them in front of Maggie as if nothing had happened. No, Sister Irene, I have some. I haven't eaten yet. She also pulled out a handful of shriveled peanuts from the corner. There was a peanut processing workshop in town, which would purchase a lot of peeled peanuts every day. The plump peanuts were suitable for making various peanut snacks and peanut butter, which would be sold by the caravans. The remaining shriveled peanuts would be divided out and given to the castle servants as snacks. Working in the castle, there were certainly some benefits that ordinary people could not enjoy. Irene put the peanuts in her pocket and said, Peanuts are the best when fried. After the banquet, Mrs. Abby will leave the kitchen and we can fry the peanuts ourselves. Mrs. Abby is not allowed. It's fine as long as she doesn't find out. Don't worry, I will clean the pot, she won't find out. But, Mr. Carter, if he finds out, he will punish you. It doesn't matter, it's just fried peanuts in the pot. Mr. Carter will not blame me. He, like the master, never mistreats us servants, even if I'm just a kitchen maid. Well, okay. Maggie licked her lips. After eating fried peanuts once, she liked this delicious snack. It was much more delicious than the dinner the servants ate every day. Bathroom. List stood next to the bathtub, constantly measuring the area of the bathtub and bathroom with a tape measure. After collecting the data, he went straight to the study, took out thick bast paper, and began to write and draw on it to design the so-called bathtub hot spring. The small fire dragon was not a safe energy source. It must be used to heat the water while also doing a good job of safety protection. This was a brain-consuming design. The blacksmiths and carpenters of Flower Town certainly did not have the brains and insight to design a bathtub hot spring. It seems to be one of the 3 laws of thermodynamics or something else. It stipulates 3 properties of boiling water: thermal convection, thermal conduction, and thermal radiation. Thermal radiation is not used for the time being. Thermal conduction and thermal convection are the most appropriate method. In terms of thermal conduction, as long as a certain part of the bathtub is heated, the water in the entire bathtub can be heated. Thinking about it, he felt a little confused. The content of junior high school physics was basically returned to the teacher. But he knew one thing, whether it was heating from the bottom of the bathtub, letting the water convect, so that the hot water rises and the cold water sinks, or from the side of the bathtub, so that the water temperature continues to pass to the other side, there needs to be a water tank isolated from the bathtub to heat the small fire dragon. I can't keep the small fire dragon heating. After the bath, I have to put the small fire dragon away, so the volcanic glass jar must be immediately engraved by a craftsman. How to release the bubbles inside during the engraving is a troublesome thing. He put one hand on the table and raised the two legs of the chair in boredom. Then he picked up a piece of volcanic glass. Casting magic eyes, he was ready to observe the fire dragon magic in the bubble and think about how to cooperate with the craftsman to collect the fire dragon magic. However, when the magic eyes was cast, his eyes fell on the position near the window of the study, and he was startled. With a shake of his hand, the volcanic glass was thrown away and the chair fell down. Fortunately, he was flexible, twisted his body, restrained his falling body, and stood firm on the table. Then he forced his eyes to move to the volcanic glass on the ground instead of looking at the window, because there was a figure made of magic, leaning against the wall. It could be seen that this was a woman with a full chest. Her hands were crossed over her chest, and her eyes seemed to be staring at Liszt. The unexpected appearance of the magic humanoid in the study that he thought was absolutely safe could definitely scare people to death. Fortunately, Liszt used the awkward fall to hide his surprise. Without disturbing the magic figure, the other party just changed her posture and continued to lean against the wall, staring at Liszt. "What is this? What is this thing?" Liszt bent down and carefully picked up the volcanic glass, forcing himself to calm down and think about what the sudden appearance of the magic figure was. He waited until he straightened up. The panic after the fright had quickly calmed down, and his brain recovered its wit. He immediately thought of the reward of the smoke mission, the thief who spied on the Lord. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.